Chapter 82. Seeing Fan Shouwu's desolate expression, Zhang Meng smiled. This was the expression he wanted. As long as Fan Shouwu wanted the black feather cloak, then everything would be easy to handle. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng smiled and patted Fan Shouwu's shoulder. Fan Gongzi, if I had the Nightmare Eagle's feather, how many gold coins would you spend to buy it? Fan Shouwu was startled when he heard this. After a while, he asked doubtfully, how do you have a Nightmare Eagle's feather? Zhang Meng smiled and shook his head. He then asked, how about it? Fan Gongzi, if I had the Nightmare Eagle's feather, would you be willing to buy it? At this time, Zhang Xiaoming also heard Zhang Meng's words and was momentarily stunned. After a while, he suddenly grabbed Zhang Meng's arm and said loudly, the fierce brothers, as long as you have the Nightmare Eagle's feather, I'm willing to pay 2,000 gold coins. Zhang Meng turned his head to look at Zhang Xiaoming and smiled as he shook his head. During this period of time with them, he had always been paying attention to these things, afraid that he would be tricked. Prince Zhang, 2,000 gold coins is too little. If you want 5,000 gold coins, I can get it for you right now. Zhang Xiaoming was startled when he heard this. He turned his head to look at Fan Shouwu and then said loudly, okay, I promise you, as long as you can find the Nightmare Eagle's feather, I'll give you 5,000 gold coins. Zhang Meng nodded his head in satisfaction when he heard this. He only wanted to use the Nightmare Eagle's feather to exchange for some gold coins. As for who would pay for it, that was none of his business. Fan Shouwu stared blankly at the two and listened to their conversation. For a moment, he didn't react. At the end, he suddenly grabbed Zhang Meng's arm and asked urgently, the fierce brothers, do you have the feather of the Nightmare Eagle? Zhang Meng smiled and nodded. Seeing this, Fan Shouwu didn't hesitate and said loudly, the fierce brothers, I want to buy those feathers too. Upon hearing this, Zhang Meng looked at Fan Shouwu with some difficulty. Fan Gongzi, I wonder how many black feather cloaks can be made from a nightmare hawk. Upon hearing this, Fan Shouwu hurriedly replied, the Nightmare Eagle's feathers are very large. Actually, if you make a black feather cloak and add other supplementary materials, you only need 30 feathers. When Zhang Meng heard this, he calculated in his heart. The Nightmare Eagle's body was very large. 30 feathers could be used to make a black feather cloak. A Nightmare Eagle definitely couldn't have only 30 feathers. Upon seeing that Fan Shouwu also wanted to buy the Nightmare Eagle's feathers, Zhang Xiaoming hurriedly tried to persuade him. Fan Gongzi, it's better if you don't buy it. I bought the Nightmare Eagle's feathers because I wanted to give them to you. Upon hearing this, Fan Shouwu smiled and shook his head. He reached out and patted Zhang Xiaoming's shoulder and said with a smile, brother, since you came with me this time, I can't treat you unfairly. I'll buy your Nightmare Eagle's feathers as an apology to you. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaoming hurriedly shook his head and refused, no, I'll buy it. Besides, I came here my own free will. It has nothing to do with Fan Gongzi. Even if there's a problem, it has nothing to do with you. Upon hearing this, Fan Shouwu shook his head. Brother, there's no need to say any more. I understand your intentions. If I didn't ask you to come here, I'm afraid you would have left long ago. In the end, this is all my fault. If I didn't insist on obtaining the Nightmare Eagle's feathers, no one would have gone to the top of the mountain to risk their lives. I'll remember your good intentions, brother, so there's no need to be polite with me. Upon seeing the two of them pushing back and forth, Zhang Meng didn't want to listen anymore. He smiled and said, wait for me here. I'll be back soon. After saying this, Zhang Meng once again walked towards the top of the mountain. Zhang Meng didn't use any powerful movement skills. He just walked up the mountain step by step. Although he was just walking, his speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from everyone's sight. Seeing Zhang Meng walk so fast, Fan Shouwu and Zhang Xiaoming looked at each other and saw a trace of surprise in each other's eyes. After a while, Zhang Xiaoming looked at Fan Shouwu in confusion and said, just who is he? Fan Shouwu shook his head. I don't know. He only said that he was from Twin Bull Mountain. Zhang Xiaoming said, Fan Gongzi, do you know of Twin Bull Mountain? Fan Shouwu shook his head. I don't know. I've never heard of that place. Zhang Xiaoming looked in the direction that Zhang Meng left in confusion and muttered to himself. It's really strange. His martial arts are so high, but he's still a nameless person. Fan Shou didn't say anything. He just silently looked in the direction that Zhang Meng left. He kept praying in his heart that Zhang Meng must obtain the nightmare eagle's feather. At the very least, he must obtain a black feather cloak to report to Miss Fu. Otherwise, where would he put his face in the future? Zhang Meng left the crowd and quickly arrived at the edge of the cliff. Looking at the steep cliff, he stomped hard on the ground and shot towards the top of the mountain like a cannonball. In the blink of an eye, Zhang Meng's height had already surpassed the top of the mountain. He slowly drew an arc and slowly landed on the ground. After landing on the top of the mountain, Zhang Meng was puzzled. He was already so strong. Why couldn't he fly? Logically speaking, based on the various novels and television dramas, when one reaches level, they should be able to fly freely in the air. However, no matter how high he could jump, he still couldn't fly. Why was he unable to do so? Zhang Meng had tried many times. He imagined that he could walk in the air like what was described in many novels. However, without exception, he fell from the sky. Therefore, he was very puzzled. Many of the protagonists in the novels were not as strong as him. They were probably not even 1/10 as strong as he was, yet they could fly. Why was he so strong? Yet he could only walk on the ground. Zhang Meng decided that after this matter was over, he must find out the reason behind it. He must find out what was restricting him, preventing him from walking in the air and showing the demeanor of a strong person. Collecting his thoughts, Zhang Meng slowly walked towards the crater in the middle of the mountain. As he got closer and closer to the crater, the temperature also increased. However, this did not affect Zhang Meng at all. Although he could also feel that the temperature here had increased, he did not feel any discomfort. Zhang Meng guessed that perhaps his mediation ability was too strong. It directly adjusted him to a state where he could adapt to this temperature. Soon, Zhang Meng walked to the edge of the crater. Here, he could already feel the heat coming from the crater. At the crater of the volcano, Zhang Meng could see that the heat had already covered the entire space. It was as if there was an invisible flame burning, and even the air was constantly trembling. However, this was not what Zhang Meng was concerned about. No matter how high the temperature here was, it had no effect on him. He was only concerned about where Nightmare Eagle had gone. Chapter 83. Zhang Meng was sure that the Nightmare Eagle was near the crater, but he didn't know where exactly. Zhang Meng looked around the crater, but he didn't find any trace of the Nightmare Eagle. He felt a little strange. Where did the Nightmare Eagle go? Could it be that the Nightmare Eagle lived in the crater? Thinking of this, Zhang Meng took a few steps forward and walked in front of the crater. Looking at the raging heat rolling in the crater, Zhang Meng felt that the temperature in the crater was definitely very high. To be on the safe side, he first stood at the edge of the crater and reached his hand into the crater. He wanted to test if the heat in the crater could burn him. However, Zhang Meng's worry was unnecessary. He didn't feel any heat when he reached his hand into the crater. He only felt a gust of hot air spurting out from the crater, causing him to involuntarily raise his hand. Seeing this situation, Zhang Meng was relieved. Since the heat in the crater couldn't burn him, he didn't have to worry at all. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng poked his head into the crater, ready to see the situation inside. Zhang Meng had just poked his head out when a strong gust of hot air erupted from the crater, causing him to almost be unable to breathe. However, this wasn't a problem. Zhang Meng held his breath and slowly looked into the crater. The top of the crater was pitch black, and the bottom was the light of flames. Looking down, Zhang Meng saw a flame burning at the bottom of the crater. However, it was too far away. Even Zhang Meng could only see a little red light. After looking at the situation inside the crater, Zhang Meng looked at the walls of the crater. His main purpose for coming here was the Nightmare Eagle. After looking around, Zhang Meng didn't find the Nightmare Eagle. He couldn't help but feel a little strange. Where did the Nightmare Eagle go? Could it be that it didn't live here? Zhang Meng carefully thought about the other places on the top of the mountain, but he couldn't think of any place where the Nightmare Eagle lived. It seemed like the Nightmare Eagle's residence was still here. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming focused his vision and looked into the crater again. This time, he looked very carefully, almost inch by inch. In the end, he finally found something different. At the edge of the crater, there was a pitch black hole. This hole was in the midst of the boiling heat. If one didn't look carefully, it wouldn't be easy to see it. Seeing this huge black hole, even if the nightmare eagle's body was huge, it shouldn't be a problem for it to crawl into this hole. Thinking of this, Meng Jing calculated the distance between the two sides. Only then did he exert force with his feet and shot out like a bolt of lightning. He streaked across the rolling heat waves in the crater and flew towards the black hole. In the blink of an eye, the black hole appeared in the crater. This place was indeed very big. It was about 30 to 40 meters high and 20 to 30 meters wide. Even Zhang Ming felt tiny as he stood in the middle of it. Following the passageway that led to the depths, Zhang Ming did not hesitate. He directly strode forward and walked inside. After walking for a short while, Zhang Ming heard the sound of wings flapping. He knew that he had come to the right place. The sound of wings flapping must have come from the nightmare eagle. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming's spirit suddenly shook, and he quickened his pace again, walking into the passage. The passageway wasn't very deep. After walking for a short distance, Zhang Ming saw an even bigger space in front of him. The nightmare eagle was lying in that space. When the nightmare eagle heard someone barging in, it screeched and stood up. In the past, when he saw the nightmare eagle, it was always flying in the sky. Due to the distance, he couldn't tell how big it was. Now, Zhang Ming could see it clearly. The nightmare eagle was really big. When it stood up, it was probably 7 to 8 meters high. When it flapped its wings, Zhang Ming estimated that if it fully opened its wings, it would be 20 meters wide. When the two sides got closer, Zhang Ming realized that the nightmare eagle's feathers were not actually black, but dark red. However, it was very dark, so when it flew in the sky, everyone saw the nightmare eagle as if it was black. A pair of sharp claws glinted coldly under the illumination of the dark red light. As the nightmare eagle moved, its sharp claws scratched out marks on the hard rock. Its curved beak was like the scythe of the grim reaper, ready to harvest the lives of its enemies at any time. Seeing that someone actually dared to intrude into its territory, the nightmare eagle immediately let out an ear-piercing shriek. In the next moment, a raging fire shot out from its mouth toward Zhang Ming. Seeing this, Zhang Ming was overjoyed. Since the prey was in front of him, there was no need to be polite. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming slightly exerted force on his feet and dodged the nightmare eagle's flames. In the next moment, he had already shot out. Before the nightmare eagle could raise its head, he had already landed on its neck. Just as the nightmare eagle was about to raise its head, Zhang Ming stepped on its neck. Its huge body fell to the ground. It struggled with all its might, but it was useless. After struggling for a while, it couldn't move anymore. It could only lie there and let out continuous cries. At this time, even if the nightmare eagle wanted to use its fire breath skill, it couldn't. Zhang Ming was standing behind it. Even if it wanted to spit fire, it couldn't burn Zhang Ming. Moreover, Zhang Ming was stepping on its neck. The nightmare eagle couldn't even breathe, let alone spit fire. Hearing the nightmare eagle's continuous cries, Zhang Ming hesitated whether or not he should break its neck. Zhang Ming looked around the large space. The four walls of the space were empty. There was nothing there. Looking at the ground, Zhang Ming was overjoyed. A large pile of black feathers was neatly arranged in a corner of the space. Looking at the number, Zhang Ming guessed that there were at least a few hundred feathers. Zhang Ming came this time for the nightmare eagle's feathers. Since he had these feathers, there was no need to kill the nightmare eagle. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming lifted his foot and let go of the nightmare eagle. The nightmare eagle was already out of breath from being stepped on by Zhang Ming. If it didn't lift its foot, it would probably die. At this time, Zhang Ming lifted his foot, and the nightmare eagle regained its freedom. It stood up abruptly, but didn't escape. Instead, it used its wings to protect a place behind it and let out continuous cries. The nightmare eagle's cries were very loud. In addition to the tight space, The nightmare eagle's cries made Zhang Meng's heart flustered. He stretched out his hand and wanted to push the nightmare eagle to the side. Unexpectedly, at this time, the nightmare eagle saw Zhang Meng's hand and suddenly opened its mouth. A scorching hot flame shot out from its mouth and flew toward Zhang Meng. Chapter 84. Seeing that the nightmare eagle was spitting fire at him, he subconsciously dodged the attack. Then, he punched the nightmare eagle's body. Although Zhang Meng did not know any martial arts, nor did he have any unique skills, the speed of his attacks was as fast as lightning, even if it was a casual attack. Zhang Meng's punch landed on the nightmare eagle's body and sent its huge body flying. Seeing the nightmare eagle cry out in pain as it flew to the side, Zhang Meng nodded in satisfaction. He slowly retracted his fist and looked at the place the nightmare eagle was protecting with its wings. What appeared in front of Zhang Meng were 3 black eggs. These black eggs were very big. He guessed that they were the nightmare eagle's eggs. Then, did that mean that the nightmare eagle was hatching chicks? Thinking of this, Zhang Meng wanted to reach out to help the eggs, but he didn't expect that the nightmare eagle, who was unable to get up from the ground, would spit fire at Zhang Meng again. Zhang Meng took a step back and dodged the ball of fire. Then, he turned around and looked at the nightmare eagle. He thought to himself, "It seems that the nightmare eagle wants to protect these eggs." Thinking of this, Zhang Meng looked at the nightmare eagle and pointed at the eggs on the ground, then at the nightmare eagle. Zhang Meng had just pointed at the eggs when the nightmare eagle, who was lying on the ground, suddenly jumped up and spat fire at Zhang Meng again. Then, it opened its sharp claws and charged at Zhang Meng. Seeing the nightmare eagle like this, Zhang Meng was a little angry. He dodged the nightmare eagle's fire and reached out to grab the nightmare eagle's wings. With a forceful snap, the nightmare eagle's wings were broken. The nightmare eagle also let out a cry of pain, but it also aroused its ferocity. After the nightmare eagle cried out, it immediately opened its claws and clawed at Meng Jing. Zhang Meng raised his leg and kicked at the nightmare eagle's claws. After being kicked by Zhang Meng, the nightmare eagle cried out again. Its claws were broken by Zhang Meng's kick. It couldn't stand anymore. After struggling a few times, it fell to the ground again and cried out in pain. Zhang Meng didn't let go and directly punched and kicked the nightmare eagle. The nightmare eagle, who had been beaten by Zhang Meng to the point of howling in pain, was still struggling with all its might at first. It even spat out flames from its mouth, but it was soon beaten to the point where it was on the verge of death, unable to stand even if it wanted to. Zhang Meng gave the nightmare eagle a good beating. Seeing that it was no longer spitting fire or struggling, Zhang Meng knew that if he continued beating it, it would probably die. In fact, Zhang Meng didn't want to kill the nightmare eagle. Since the nightmare eagle's feathers were so valuable, Zhang Meng could keep them. When he needed feathers, he could pluck a few and sell them. Zhang Meng kicked the nightmare eagle a few more times. Seeing that it couldn't move, he ignored it. Zhang Meng sized up the space and looked at the nightmare eagle that couldn't move anymore. He decided to let it go this time and come back after selling you air. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng walked to the pile of feathers and ignored the nightmare eagle. He pondered, how should he take all the feathers away? After thinking for a while, Zhang Meng decided to only take the amount he needed. As for the rest of the feathers, he would leave them here. Since no one could come here and these feathers couldn't fly away, this was the safest place. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng counted 60 feathers and put them aside. After doing this, Zhang Meng tore his outer clothes into strips and made them into ropes. He wrapped the 60 feathers up. Zhang Meng glanced at the nightmare eagle that was lying on the ground, unable to move. He felt that there wasn't anything good here, so he immediately picked up the 60 feathers and walked out. The journey back was fast. In a few blinks of an eye, Zhang Meng reached the bottom of the mountain. At this time, Zhang Meng slowed down and walked towards Fan Shouwu and the others. At this time, Fan Shouwu and the others were looking at the mountain peak with doubts. To be honest, Fan Shouwu didn't believe that Zhang Ming could get the nightmare eagle's feathers. If Fan Shouwu hadn't been to the top of the mountain, he might have believed that Zhang Ming could get the nightmare eagle's feathers. However, after reaching the top of the mountain, Fan Shouwu realized that if he wanted to get the nightmare eagle's feathers, he wouldn't just have to face the nightmare eagle. He would also have to face the extreme heat. At this moment, Fan Shouwu could faintly guess that the nightmare eagle lived in the middle of the mountain peak. Fan Shouwu also knew the temperature at the top of the mountain. The closer to the center, the hotter it got. Everyone was already so hot at the edge of the mountain peak. Just walking 20 meters and was already unbearable. Moreover, the edge of the mountain was very far from the center. Through simple calculations, the temperature at the center of the mountain peak was probably too high for people to survive. It was also because of this reason that Fan Shouwu even suspected that Zhang Ming had already been roasted. After all, this kid came out to earn gold coins. For the sake of gold coins, he might have thrown caution to the wind. Even if it was hot, he would still fight. Fan Shouwu felt that in order to get the nightmare eagle's feathers, Zhang Ming endured the unbearable heat and walked to the center. In the end, he walked to the center and fainted, but no one saved him. Based on this calculation, the possibility of him being roasted was very high. Although Zhang Ming hadn't been gone for long, everyone was a little worried. After all, Zhang Ming had saved their lives before. When the Earth Bear was chasing them, if Zhang Ming hadn't used a tree to knock down the Earth Bear, they would have been completely wiped out. Old Luo quickly walked to Fan Shouwu's side and said in a low voice, "Gongzi, does the Fierce Brothers have any good ideas to get the nightmare eagle's feathers?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he shook his head. "I don't know either. He just left after saying that." Zhang Xiaoming, who had been standing beside Fan Shouwu, hadn't spoken since Zhang Ming left. At this moment, when he heard old Luo mention Zhang Ming, he also sighed. If only I didn't let him go. Now that I think about it, I'm afraid that he won't be able to survive this time." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he silently nodded. At this moment, he was also a little regretful. When Zhang Ming left just now, his speed was very fast. This also proved that his martial arts weren't bad. However, the situation at the top of the mountain wasn't something that could be handled with good martial arts. In such a hot place, it didn't matter how good one's martial arts were. Even if his martial arts were better than everyone else's and his inner strength was stronger, how long could he last? How far could he go compared to everyone else? When he thought of this, Fan Shouwu sighed helplessly. Chapter 85. Just as everyone's imagination was running wild, a guard suddenly shouted, "Look, the Fierce Brothers are back." After everyone heard the guard shout, they hurriedly raised their heads and looked towards the top of the mountain. Sure enough, a person was walking towards them from afar. The sky was very dark, and the distance was very far. Relying on the fact that there weren't any trees on the top of the mountain, everyone could clearly see the person in the distance. They could only see that it was a person, but no one could see clearly. The guard shout just now was just a subconscious reaction. Looking at the figure in the distance, as it got closer and closer, everyone realized that there was something different about it. Why was this figure so tall and wide? Seeing this scene, everyone panicked. Could it be that a monster was coming? Seeing such a strange-looking fellow, Fan Shouwu had already ordered everyone to prepare for battle. On this spacious mountaintop, if there really was a monster, running away was impossible. They could only fight. Zhang Ming's speed was very fast. When everyone took out their weapons and prepared for battle, he was already not far from them. At this moment, Fan Shouwu saw clearly that the person was indeed Zhang Ming. The reason why Zhang Ming was so wide was because he was carrying something on his back. At this moment, Fan Shouwu only felt his heart beating faster and faster. He could already faintly feel that the thing on Zhang Ming's back should be the feathers of the nightmare eagle. How is this possible? What about the heat on the mountaintop? What about the ferocity of the nightmare eagle? How could Zhang Ming easily obtain the feathers of the nightmare eagle? Could it be that Zhang Ming was its relative? As the distance between the two sides got closer and closer, everyone could clearly see what Zhang Ming was carrying. The feathers of the nightmare eagle. Zhang Meng carried 60 nightmare eagle feathers on his back and quickly arrived in front of the crowd. He didn't care about the crowd's wide, open mouths and dumbfounded expressions. He quickly walked to the front of the crowd and threw the 60 nightmare eagle feathers on the ground. He turned his head and said to Fan Shouwu, "Fan Gongzi, please take a look. Are these the feathers of the nightmare eagle?" After everyone heard Zhang Meng's words, it was as if they had woken up from a dream. "That's right. I can't be sure if these are really the feathers of the nightmare eagle." Thinking of this, everyone hurriedly gathered around the pile of feathers and began to examine it. Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming were no exception. They reached out to touch the feather that Zhang Meng had brought back. Feeling the slight warmth from the feather, they were certain that it was the feather of a nightmare eagle. Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming were even more shocked after knowing that this pile of feathers was the real feather of a nightmare eagle. Although they didn't calculate how long Zhang Meng had been gone for, Fan Shouwu felt that Zhang Meng hadn't been gone for long. When he had brought people to climb the mountain, it had taken almost an entire night to barely reach the peak. However, Zhang Meng had only been gone for a short while. Everyone had been chatting here, but they hadn't talked much. In such a short time, Zhang Meng had already made a round trip and actually brought back the feathers of the nightmare eagle. How is this possible? After being shocked, Fan Shouwu raised his head to look at Zhang Meng and asked doubtfully, "The Fierce Brothers, how did you do it?" When Zhang Meng heard this, he smiled and waved his hand. "That's not important. Fan Gongzi, these feathers are indeed the feathers of the nightmare eagle." Fan Shouwu nodded. Indeed. At this point, Fan Shouwu thought for a while before continuing. "The Fierce Brothers, I won't hide it from you. I don't have that many gold coins right now. Can you allow me to return the gold coins to you after I return?" Zhang Meng nodded. To him, there was no difference in returning with gold coins. As for Fan Shouwu, it was impossible for him to renege on his debt. Facing someone who could easily retrieve the feathers of the nightmare eagle, even if Fan Shouwu was a fool, he wouldn't easily offend him over 10,000 gold coins. Zhang Qiuming also stood up and asked doubtfully, "The Fierce Brothers, you were able to obtain the feathers of the nightmare star. Could it be that you've already defeated the nightmare eagle?" Zhang Meng nodded, agreeing with Zhang Qiuming's words. However, he didn't want to say anything more on this topic. He turned his head to look at Fan Shouwu and said with a smile, "Fan Gongzi, actually I still have a lot of things I want to ask you about. I wonder if that's possible?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he hurriedly replied, "No problem. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. As long as I know, I'll definitely tell you." Zhang Meng smiled. "Fan Gongzi, in this world, what can be considered good stuff? Can you tell me?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he stared blankly. Immediately, his eyes widened as he looked at Zhang Meng in disbelief. "The Fierce Brothers, could it be that you're looking for good stuff?" Zhang Meng didn't hide it and nodded. "That's right. Our Twin Bull Mountain village is very poor, so I want to build an auction house there to auction off all sorts of treasures in this world." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he stared blankly at Zhang Meng for a long while before slowly speaking. "The Fierce Brothers, although you were able to kill the nightmare eagle, you have to know that in this world, there are many magical beasts and immortal beasts that are more powerful than the nightmare eagle. Most importantly, no matter what kind of treasure appears, it will be accompanied by the appearance of a powerful guardian. The strength of some guardians will be hundreds or even thousands of times stronger than the nightmare eagle." When he said this, Fan Shouwu sighed. "The Fierce Brothers, this path won't work. I know you want to make your village better, but let's change the method." When Zhang Qiuming, who was standing on the side, heard Fan Shouwu's words, he also said, "The Fierce Brothers, if we don't open an auction house, we can do something else. As long as you come to Cyanwood City, no matter what you want to do, I'll support you." When he said this, Zhang Qiuming patted Fan Shouwu and said with a smile, "In Cyanwood City, even if I can't protect you, we still have Fan Gongzi. In the South region, I believe that as long as Fan Gongzi appears, there's basically nothing that can't be done. How about it? The Fierce Brothers, as long as you think about what to do, I'll definitely support you." When Zhang Meng heard this, he shook his head and said with a smile, Thank you for your kindness, Prince Zhang. Unfortunately, I don't know how to do anything. After thinking about it, I can only rely on my abilities to make a living. When Zhang Qiuming heard this, he laughed. The Fierce Brothers, your martial arts are so high. You can set up an escort agency here, just like the mercenary groups in the Magic Empire. When the time comes, you could deliver goods to merchants. I heard that you can also make a lot of money. Zhang Ming shook his head again. I don't think it's suitable for me to be an escort agency. Right now, I only want to open the largest auction house and let everyone know that the Twin Bull Mountain Village's auction house is the largest and the best. Here, as long as you can think of it, you can definitely buy it. Chapter 86. Although Zhang Meng spoke with confidence, Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming were not willing to believe him. However, seeing that Zhang Meng did not listen to their advice, they let it go. Zhang Meng saw that the two of them had stopped persuading him and asked again, "If there are any treasures near us, you can tell me. When my auction house opens, if you want to buy something, I will definitely give you the lowest discount possible." After Fan Shouwu heard Zhang Meng's words, he could only smile bitterly and shake his head. Then I thanked the Fierce Brothers for their kind intentions. However, I can't remember many of the treasures you mentioned at the moment. How about this? When I go back and hand over the gold coins to you, I will write a detailed receipt. How about this? Hearing this, Zhang Ming hurriedly cupped his fist towards Fan Shouwu and said gratefully, "Then I thank Fan Gongzi for your help." The three of them exchanged a few pleasantries before getting the guards to carry the feathers and prepare to descend the mountain. After walking for a short distance, Fan Shouwu suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Zhang Qiuming. He said hesitantly, "Since we are already here, should we go and see Lord Mu again?" Zhang Qiuming shook his head. "It's better not to go. If he knows that we have returned to the mountain peak, he will definitely complain again." Hearing this, Fan Shouwu smiled and nodded. He then waved his hand at the guards. "Let's go home." As he spoke, Fan Shouwu had already taken the lead to descend the mountain. His mission could be considered completed, regardless of whether he had personally obtained the Nightmare Eagle's feathers. At least he had something to report to Miss Fu. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. After descending the mountain, they walked along the flat ground. Before they reached the edge of the forest, the sky was already bright. At this moment, one of the guards who had been scouting ahead suddenly ran back. "Fan Gongzi, is there someone in the forest ahead?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he was shocked and hurriedly asked, "Are they the people we met at the entrance of the passage?" The guard shook his head. "No, it's another group. Judging from their attire, they seem to be from the Magic Empire." Zhang Meng's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He stepped forward and asked, "Is there a female mage among these people?" The guard nodded. Indeed, there was a magician among the living people, but he was wearing a cloak, so I couldn't tell if he was a man or a woman. After listening to the guard's words, Zhang Ming was certain that this group of people should be Gerard's group. Thinking of Gerard, Zhang Ming thought of Carter. There were no experts in his mountain stronghold. Although that Carter was not very strong, at least his martial arts were better than the people in the mountain stronghold. If such a person were to be made a guard, he should be able to do it. Thinking of Carter, Zhang Ming thought of Alanica again. If there was a magician in his village, it should be very good. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming patted Fan Shouwu's shoulder and said with a smile, "Fan Gongzi, I'll go take a look. Maybe it's someone I know." Fan Shouwu was stunned when he heard this. He asked hesitantly, "Do you know someone in the Magic Empire?" Zhang Ming smiled and nodded, then walked in the direction the guard pointed. Zhang Ming didn't walk far in the direction the guard pointed. He heard voices in the forest. Hearing these voices, Zhang Ming was even more certain that this group of people was Gerard's group. This was because he had already heard Gerard giving orders. Zhang Ming hadn't walked far into the forest when he heard a voice coming from the tree in front of him. "Who is it?" "This is..." The person in the tree stopped talking halfway because the person in the tree recognized Zhang Ming. Zhang Ming patted Carter's shoulder. Carter's stagnant strength immediately increased by leaps and bounds. In the blink of an eye, he had already reached the level of a level 5 warrior. Facing such a rocket like leveling up, everyone in the group, including Gerard, was now imagining that Zhang Meng would pat them on the shoulder and their strength would increase by leaps and bounds. At this moment, the guard hiding in the tree was ecstatic when he saw Zhang Meng. Without saying anything, he immediately jumped down from the tree and walked quickly to Zhang Meng. "So it's you, sir. Do you have any orders? I will do it as soon as possible." Seeing the guard's respectful expression, Zhang Meng naturally knew why he was so respectful. However, he wasn't in a good mood. Everyone's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. "Since you want to do something for me, go get Carter and Valenica." The guard was stunned when he heard this, but he didn't dare to ask anything. He hurriedly responded and ran back to the camp. At this moment, Gerard was eating the food that the guard handed over. He was tasteless. He was now thinking about what to do in the future. This time, he had lost so many people. How was he going to explain it when he returned? Logically speaking, losing a few people wasn't important. The key was that Gerard's team's main mission was to investigate. After discovering the Nightmare Eagle, they immediately used a magic scroll to send it over. Their mission was considered completed. However, in order to obtain more benefits, Gerard led the team into the underground passage and lost so many people. Logically speaking, it was normal to lose some people in an adventure. However, Gerard's mission was only to investigate. Gerard was sure that once the family knew about this, his younger brother would definitely take the opportunity to slander him. By then, even if it was normal, it would become abnormal. Thinking of this, Gerard instantly felt frustrated. Especially when he looked at Carter, who wasn't far away. He felt even more upset. Why was he always the unlucky one? Why was it that good things never happened to him? At this moment, the guard who was on sentry duty returned. Gerard was even angrier when he saw that the guard actually dared to return without permission. He berated him loudly. "Who allowed you to come back without my orders? How dare you come back without permission? Are you tired of living?" After hearing Gerard's reprimand, the guard's expression changed. However, he had no choice but to suppress the anger in his heart. He lowered his head and whispered in Gerard's ear, "Young master, that person came back again. That person came back again? Who? Tell me clearly, who came back?" After saying this, Gerard's eyes suddenly lit up. He immediately grabbed the guard and asked, "Are you talking about that person?" The guard nodded. "Yes, that person. I saw him outside just now, so I came back to report." After hearing the guard's words, Gerard said loudly, "Then what are you waiting for? Why aren't you inviting him over? Are you going to let him wait outside?" Chapter 87. After hearing Gerard's words, the guard's face immediately showed a trace of embarrassment. He whispered again, "Young master, that person wants Carter and Valenica to go out to meet him. He doesn't want to come over." Hearing this, Gerard was stunned. After a long while, he stood up abruptly and said loudly, "Let's go. Let me there." Hearing this, the guard did not dare to delay. He hurried a few steps forward and led the way for Gerard. After walking for a short distance, Gerard saw Zhang Meng standing not far away, looking at him with a smile. Looking at the smile on Zhang Meng's face, the nervous Gerard immediately relaxed. He immediately walked a few steps forward and stood in front of Zhang Meng. Brother." "Oh no, sir." Looking at Gerard's expression, Zhang Meng smiled kindly. "Call me Brother Meng." Hearing this, Gerard rubbed his hands and stammered, Brother Meng, you're here." Zhang Meng nodded. "I'm here this time to take Carter and Valenica away. I wonder if Master Gerald will agree?" Hearing this, Gerard was stunned. "Brother Meng, why do you want to take the two of them away?" Zhang Meng said, "Because I want to do some business, so I need some help." "What do you think, Master Gerald?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Gerard blinked his eyes. Carter is easy, but Valenica is a bit hard to say. She's a member of the temple. If she leaves without permission, I'm afraid the temple will investigate and things will get out of hand. Zhang Meng looked at Gerard. "The temple? Does Valenica need the temple's approval to leave?" Gerard said, "As long as you join the temple, you're basically a member of the temple for the rest of your life. It's not easy to leave. Until now, I haven't heard of anyone leaving the temple. Hearing this, Zhang Meng nodded. If that's the case, I'll ask Valanica personally later. If she's willing to leave the temple, I'll inform the temple. If she's unwilling, then forget it. After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Gerard couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Although Zhang Meng was powerful, he didn't think that the temple would change the thousands of years of rules because of one sentence from Zhang Meng. It wasn't that no one had ever left the temple, but generally speaking, those who left the temple ended up in a miserable state. Seeing that Zhang Meng didn't speak, Gerard gritted his teeth and suddenly said in a low voice, "Brother Meng, do you still blame me?" Zhang Meng was stunned when he heard this. Then, he remembered that Zhang Meng had added a lot of seasonings to his roasted meat. If not for the fact that he wasn't afraid of those poisons, he might have been poisoned by him. Looking at Gerard's expression, he was probably afraid that he would find fault with him. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng looked at Gerard and said in a low voice, "How could I forget such a big thing?" Zhang Meng said. Seeing that Gerard's face had turned pale, he hurriedly stepped forward and patted him on the shoulder before continuing. "However, I can give you a chance to turn over a new leaf. Do you understand?" Hearing this, Gerard nodded his head vigorously. "Brother Meng, don't worry. I will definitely turn over a new leaf. You must believe me. I won't let you down." Seeing Gerard like this, Zhang Meng nodded his head in satisfaction. "In the future, I will open an auction house in Twin Bull Mountain. At that time, I may need your help. So, your performance in the future is very important." Gerard's eyes lit up when he heard Zhang Meng's words. Based on his performance, didn't that mean that if he performed well, Brother Meng would be happy and increase his strength a little? Thinking of this, Gerard's face was already flushed red. He patted himself hard and promised Zhang Meng, "Brother Meng, don't worry. In the future, you will see my performance. If my performance doesn't satisfy you, then don't call me a brother anymore." Looking at Gerard's repeated promises, Zhang Meng understood that it was impossible to make the horse run and not let it eat grass at the same time. So, if he wanted Gerard to do things for him, he had to give him some benefits first. Only when he had some benefits would he have more energy to do things for him. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng patted Gerard's shoulder again and asked with a smile, "Master Gerard, how do you feel?" Just as Zhang Meng's hand touched Gerard's shoulder, Gerard felt an aura coming from his hand, and then it began to move around his body. This strong aura only circulated in his body once before it immediately returned to Zhang Meng's hand. Although the aura from Zhang Meng had disappeared, Gerard could clearly feel that the power in his body had increased by a lot. Gerard was originally only a second-level magic swordsman, and the amount of combat chi in his body was too little. Every time he moved, the aura on his body would be like a breeze, thin enough. But now it was really different. Gerard had just activated his will when the combat chi in his body surged like a fierce wind, instantly covering his entire body. Feeling this change, Gerard had already forgotten to answer Zhang Meng's question. He just circulated the combat chi in his body over and over again, feeling this fierce wind blowing in his body over and over again. It wasn't until Zhang Meng asked him a second time that Gerard realized that all this had happened after Zhang Meng patted him. Thinking of this, Gerard was so excited that he couldn't speak. At this moment, he finally understood. What family elder? What family elixir? What family cultivation method? What family younger brother? All of this was nothing in front of the person in front of him. He had already been judged by the family elders that he had no future in cultivation. Some elders even concluded that the future glory of the Custer family would depend on his younger brother, Lance. But this big Brother Meng in front of him made his strength soar in just a breath's time. What was this? This was a living thigh. At this moment, Gerard finally understood why Carter wanted to be his follower when Zhang Meng left. Now, Gerard also had this thought. If he followed Big Brother Meng, as long as Big Brother Meng patted him from time to time, then his strength would increase to a terrifying degree. If he didn't hurry up and hug him, Gerard was sure that he would spend the rest of his life slapping himself. Thinking of this, Gerard hurriedly lowered his head wondering which thigh he should hug from Zhang Ming. Seeing Gerard's unfriendly gaze, Zhang Ming hurriedly took 2 steps back. "Hey, Master Gerald, I'm asking you a question. How are you feeling now?" Gerard heard this and saw Zhang Ming dodge again, so he scratched his head in embarrassment. "Big brother Ming, I'm very good." Chapter 88. Looking at Gerard, whose face was flushed with excitement, Zhang Ming smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "Xiao Jia, do your job well. I won't treat you badly. Do you understand what I mean?" Hearing Zhang Ming call him Xiao Jia, Gerard was not angry. Instead, he felt a sense of familiarity. At this moment, after hearing Zhang Ming's question, he hurriedly nodded. "Brother Ming, don't worry. I understand what you mean." At this moment, Gerard really understood. In the past, because his talent in martial arts was not strong, he was afraid that his younger brother would steal his position as the successor. But now, humph. As long as he hugged Brother Ming's thigh, nothing would be a problem. As for his talent in martial arts, he was not good enough. Humph. Was this a problem in front of Brother Ming? When he returned to the family, when the elders saw his strength advancing by leaps and bounds, they would be stunned. Especially his younger brother, Lance, after knowing his strength, he would be very disappointed. Seeing Gerard looking at him blankly, Zhang Ming had already guessed that this kid was definitely not looking at him. He was thinking about his own matters. Gerard was dreaming. Naturally, Zhang Ming would not accompany him in his dream. He patted Gerard on the shoulder. "Xiao Jia, let's go. I still have things to do." After hearing Zhang Ming's call, Gerard led him back to the camp. As soon as Zhang Ming walked into the camp, Carter saw him. He hurriedly stood up and greeted him. "Brother Ming, why are you here?" Zhang Ming smiled. He didn't want to waste time with nonsense, so he spoke directly. "I remember that you said you were willing to follow me, right?" After hearing Zhang Ming's words, Carter's eyes immediately lit up. He asked happily, "Brother Ming, are you willing to let me follow you?" Zhang Ming nodded. "I happen to have some things to do and need someone to help me. Are you willing?" Hearing this, Carter hurriedly nodded. I'm willing. What a joke. How could he let go of such a good opportunity? Originally, he was unable to improve his cultivation by even half a step, but Brother Ming just patted him on the shoulder and solved it. For such an expert to be willing to take him in, it was a great thing. Zhang Ming turned to look at Valanica and asked with a smile, "Valanica, are you willing to come with me?" After Valanica heard Zhang Ming's words, her little face suddenly turned red, and she lowered her head and said, "No, if I go with you, the temple will definitely find trouble with you." Hearing this, Zhang Ming smiled and shook his head. "Temple, it doesn't matter. As long as you agree to come with me, I will discuss this with the temple. I will definitely not make things difficult for you. Let's talk about this." After listening to Zhang Ming's words, Valanica suddenly raised her head and asked doubtfully, "How?" Hearing this, Zhang Ming smiled. "How else can we talk about it? Let's just talk about it like that. Anyway, as long as you agree to come with me, I will definitely make the temple agree." Valanica shook her head. "It's better not. It's useless even if you go to the temple to talk about it. Besides, I only know one type of magic. I still want to stay in the temple to continue cultivating." Hearing this, Zhang Ming nodded. "All right then. When you have thought it through, you can look for me. As for where to look," Zhang Ming pointed at Gerard. "If you want to look for me, you can ask Jia. He might know where I am." Jia. After hearing how Zhang Ming addressed Gerard, Valanica and Carter were stunned. They turned to look at Gerard, wanting to see his reaction. When Gerard heard Zhang Ming address him as Jia in front of everyone, he blushed a little. However, he immediately remembered that Zhang Ming addressed him that way because he treated him as one of his own. Thinking of this, Gerard proudly straightened his back. "Humph. Brother Ming called me Jia because he treated me as one of his own. Why didn't he call you guys that? Little Carl, Little Wei." Since the matter was settled, Zhang Ming did not want to waste any more time. He waved at Carter. "Then we are leaving." As he spoke, Zhang Ming took the lead and walked in the direction they came from. When Carter saw that Zhang Ming had left, he did not dare to delay. He hurriedly waved at Gerard and the others and chased after him with large strides. Zhang Ming brought Carter with him and quickly rushed back to where Fan Shouwu and the others were resting. Fan Shouwu was wondering what Zhang Ming was doing when he saw that Zhang Ming had returned. Seeing Carter behind Zhang Ming, Fan Shouwu greeted him with some confusion. "The Fierce Brothers, this is?" When Zhang Ming heard this, he smiled and introduced him. "His name is Carter. He'll be working with me from now on." Although Fan Shouwu did not understand what Zhang Ming meant by working with him, he understood the general meaning. Seeing that Carter was burly, he knew that this person's martial arts skills were definitely not low. Everyone exchanged pleasantries for a while before they set off again and walked back the way they came. After walking for a while, Zhang Xiaoming suddenly turned his head and laughed at Fan Shouwu. "Fan Gongzi, listen. There's the sound of water in front." Fan Shouwu was delighted when he heard this. They had been hungry and thirsty the entire way. Although there was food, no one wanted to eat when they were thirsty. After everyone heard Zhang Xiaoming's words, they immediately looked at Fan Shouwu. When Fan Shouwu saw this, he knew that everyone was thirsty. He quickly waved his hand and shouted, "Let's all go over and drink to our heart's content." With that, Fan Shouwu took the lead and ran toward the sound of water. Everyone was already unable to endure their thirst. When they saw Fan Shouwu run, they immediately took large strides and ran toward the water source. In order to drink the water as soon as possible, everyone quickened their pace. The sound of water flowing became louder and louder. Finally, after everyone ran 300 to 400 meters, a small stream appeared in front of them. Looking at the clear water flowing in the stream, everyone could not help but swallow their saliva. However, no one dared to go over. They all stared intently at the stream. Everyone's old rival, the great earth bear, was currently lying on a large rock by the stream, sleeping soundly. Fan Shouwu was speechless as he listened to the flowing stream and looked at the great earth bear that was sleeping soundly. Since the heavens gave us a stream, why did they have to sacrifice a great earth bear? With this fellow by the stream, how are we going to drink water? The ferocity of the great earth bear was still vivid in everyone's mind the first few nights. If not for Zhang Ming chasing it away with a large piece of wood, everyone would have been wiped out. What should we do now? After seeing the great earth bear, everyone was so frightened that they did not dare to make sound. They only silently looked at Fan Shouwu. When Fan Shouwu saw that everyone was looking at him, he smiled bitterly and sighed. Then he lowered his voice and said, "Let's quietly go downstream and hide from this great earth bear." When everyone heard this, they all nodded. Under such circumstances, this was the best choice. Now that the great earth bear was sleeping, if it was awakened, everyone would be finished. Seeing this scene, Fan Shouwu became even more nervous. He turned his gaze back to the earth black bear, wanting to see its reaction. But unfortunately, the earth black bear seemed to have really fallen asleep. It did not have any reaction to what was happening in the outside world. Seeing that Carter had already walked to Zhang Ming's side, he immediately laid down on the bank and started drinking water. At this moment, the earth black bear still did not move. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaoming suddenly lowered his voice and said, "Fan Gongzi, why don't we go over too? Even if we don't go over, if the earth black bear wants to attack us, it won't be easy for us to escape." After Fan Shouwu heard Zhang Xiaoming's words, he thought for a while before making up his mind. He waved his hand to the people behind him. "Let's go and drink some water." When everyone heard this, they were both surprised and delighted. They were delighted that there was finally water to drink. But to drink water within the earth black bear's attack range was simply too exciting. Fan Shouwu led everyone towards the stream. As he walked, his gaze was always on the earth black bear, not daring to be the slightest bit negligent. Although he clearly knew that if the earth black bear wanted to attack them, it would be useless even if he kept staring at the earth black bear. The earth black bear's body was humongous. Not only was its attack power incomparably strong, even its speed was not something they could compare to. It could be said that if the earth black bear attacked now, everyone would definitely end up being wiped out. But since things had already come to this step, there was no point in thinking too much. Fan Shou walked to the stream. He made up his mind and did not look at the earth black bear anymore. He directly laid down by the stream and drank his fill first. Everyone laid down by the stream and drank for quite a while. Only then did they completely quench their thirst. At this moment, the earth black bear was still sleeping soundly. After Fan Shou finished drinking, seeing that the earth black bear did not move, he was slightly relieved. After everyone finished drinking, he immediately stood up and wanted everyone to leave. When Zhang Meng saw Fan Shou standing up, he hurriedly laughed. After walking for so many days and rolling in the dust so many times, don't tell me you don't want to wash up? Wash up. Fan Shou looked at Zhang Meng in disbelief. He only wanted to ask one question. Brother Meng, is it really good to do such things beside the earth black bear? When Zhang Meng saw that Fan Shou did not speak, he ignored him. When he saw that everyone had finished drinking, he immediately jumped into the stream and started to toss around. These 2 days, it was indeed too dirty. Near the Red Mountain Peak, it was all dust. In order to avoid the nightmare eagle's detection, everyone had to hide in the dust. One could imagine how dirty it was. When Carter saw that Zhang Meng had jumped down, he did not even hesitate and also jumped down. Seeing the two of them tossing around in the stream, Fan Shou was speechless. He turned to look at the guard behind him and then looked at Zhang Qiuming beside him, following which he sighed. All of you go, it's already like this anyway. When everyone heard this, they all turned to look at the earth black bear and then looked at Zhang Meng and Carter in the stream. Only then did they carefully walk in the stream. Half an hour later, the originally clear stream water had been made extremely dirty by everyone. Only then did everyone feel refreshed and set off on their journey. As they walked, Fan Shou, who turned back to look, suddenly narrowed his eyes. His hand also tightly grasped the hilt of his sword. The earth black bear had already stood up and was looking over. Seeing this scene, Fan Shou was so nervous that he could not speak. He only stretched out his hand to push Zhang Qiuming beside him and pointed behind him. But when Fan Shou turned his head, he shockingly realized that the earth black bear had already shakily walked in the opposite direction from him. Seeing the earth black bear walking away, Fan Shou and Zhang Qiuming exchanged glances. Then, at the same time, they turned their gazes towards Zhang Meng, who was walking in front. An inconceivable thought appeared in their minds. Could it be that the reason why the earth black bear did not attack everyone was because of Zhang Meng? Ever since Zhang Meng had defeated it previously, could it be that it was scared? So scared that even if he did anything in front of it, it would not dare to make sound? Could it really be like this? Chapter 90. When Fan Shou thought of this, he turned to look at Zhang Qiuming and saw that his eyes were also filled with disbelief. Looking at Zhang Meng walking in front of him, Fan Shou suddenly quickened his pace and walked to Zhang Meng's side, smiling as he spoke. The fierce brothers, how do you know that the earth black bear won't attack us? When Zhang Meng heard this, he turned to look at Fan Shou. What's so strange about that? It's afraid. When Fan Shou heard this, he was first startled, then asked with some hesitation, Who is it afraid of? You. When he heard Fan Shou's words, Zhang Meng nodded. I think so. When Fan Shou heard this, he was truly stunned. Although he had already faintly guessed that this would be the result, when Zhang Meng personally admitted it, it still made him feel very surprised. The earth black bear was not to be trifled with. Whether it was in the Magic Empire or the Anwu Empire, everyone acknowledged that the earth black bear's strength was absolutely formidable. But now, Zhang Meng actually admitted that the fierce earth black bear was afraid of him. Fan Shou was still somewhat in disbelief. After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Fan Shou couldn't help but ask again, The fierce brothers, is what you said true? You're not lying to me, right? Zhang Meng smiled as he shook his head. He patted Fan Shou's shoulder. What's there to not believe? Look at the nightmare eagle's feather on them. Didn't I also bring it back for you? At this point, Fan Shou had no choice but to believe it. Looking at the smiling Zhang Meng, he thought in his heart, the earth black bear that everyone feared was afraid of him. He could even obtain the nightmare eagle's feather. Who in the world was this guy? Could it be that the fort master of the Twin Ox Mountain stronghold was really that powerful? When Zhang Ming saw Fan Shouwu looking at him in disbelief, he couldn't help but pat him on the shoulder again. Fan Gongzi, I'm going to build an auction house in Mount Shuangyu this time. There might be some things that I really need your help with. I wonder if you'll agree? When Fan Shouwu heard this, he hurriedly nodded. No problem. If there's anything you need, just tell me. As long as it's within my ability, I'll definitely do it for you. Zhang Ming thought for a moment, then slowly said, what I want to know the most right now is, of course, what everyone needs. I want to ask Fan Gongzi to help me find out what everyone in Anwu country likes, or rather, what they need the most. When he said this, Zhang Ming paused and thought for a moment before continuing. Of course, if Fan Gongzi can contact some customers beforehand, that would naturally be even better. When Fan Shouwu heard this, he first glanced at Zhang Ming, then asked in confusion. The Fierce Brothers, I know that you're very strong, but you have to know that there are many things that we can't do. When he said this, Fan Shouwu was afraid that Zhang Ming didn't understand what he meant, so he explained. If you want to build an auction house, not only do you need to prepare many things, you also need to have strength. Of course, I don't deny that the Fierce Brothers are indeed very strong, but there are many things that can't be done by relying on one person's strength. When Zhang Ming heard this, he smiled and turned to look at Fan Shouwu. For example, when Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Ming didn't seem to care at all, he helplessly shook his head. Let's not talk about the problem of supply for now. Let's talk about Mount Shuangyu. If you have some treasure, and it's an extremely good treasure, if you want to start an auction house, you have to publicize it and let everyone know. Am I right? When Zhang Ming heard this, he nodded. Fan Shouwu was right. If you had a treasure, you would definitely publicize it and let everyone know. How could you hide it from everyone? If that was the case, why would you open an auction house? When Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Ming agreed with his view, he continued. If the treasures in your auction house are just some ordinary goods, then everything is fine. However, if there really are some truly good treasures, then I believe that there will definitely be many experts who will either steal or rob it. In short, they will definitely get their hands on it. You have to know that there are many experts who, after reaching a certain level of cultivation, will stop advancing due to various reasons. However, some treasures just so happen to be able to increase their strength and break through their bottleneck. Think about it. Wouldn't these kinds of people use various methods to obtain these treasures? When Zhang Ming heard Fan Shouwu's words, he nodded somewhat unconcernedly. Fan Gongzi, what you said is indeed reasonable. I think that such a thing will also happen. When Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Ming once again agreed with his view, he also nodded in satisfaction. The Fierce Brothers, if that's the case, do you still want to open an auction house? Zhang Ming nodded. Of course I want to open it. Don't tell me that I won't open an auction house just because I'm afraid of them stealing and robbing. When Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Ming still had such thoughts, he couldn't help but shake his head with a wry smile. The Fierce Brothers, I know that you are very strong, but there are truly many experts in this world. Their cultivation has reached a level that you don't dare to imagine. Against such people, to put it bluntly, even if you are strong, I'm afraid that it will be of no use. At this point, Fan Shouwu turned his head and glanced at the place where the great earth black bear had disappeared before continuing. Although you can scare the great earth black bear away, you have to know that in front of a true expert, the great earth black bear that is incomparably strong in our eyes is just like an ant in their eyes. They can exterminate it with a flick of their finger. Their strength is definitely not something that we can imagine. If your auction house has some rare treasures and these experts see them, I'm afraid that it will bring disaster to your mountain stronghold. When Zhang Ming heard this, he nodded. He understood what Fan Shouwu meant, and he also knew that Fan Shouwu was reminding him out of goodwill. If his auction house really did have treasures that could raise one's strength, then those who couldn't obtain these treasures would definitely think of ways to steal them or rob them. With the strength of the Twin Ox Mountain, it really wasn't enough to deal with these experts. Those experts could probably destroy the Twin Ox Mountain with a flick of their finger. However, although Zhang Ming was very grateful for Fan Shouwu's reminder, he still had to continue with the auction house plan. Zhang Ming didn't believe that with his strength, he would still be afraid of anyone. Therefore, no one could stop him from opening the auction house plan. The world's largest auction house plan was Zhang Ming's first plan, and he definitely couldn't let it fail halfway. When he thought of this, Zhang Ming somewhat gratefully patted Fan Shouwu's shoulder. I'm very grateful for Fan Gongzi's reminder, but I've already decided on this matter. I must open this auction house. Seeing that Zhang Ming was determined, Fan Shouwu sighed. The fierce brothers, things aren't as simple as you think. Chapter 91. Fan Shouwu continued. Other than facing those experts with bad intentions, you still have to face many other problems. Many people who have obtained treasures will request the auction house to deliver them. Brother Ming, just the task of delivering the goods is already extremely difficult. Zhang Ming heard this and looked at Fan Shouwu, asking, Fan Gongzi, are you saying that during the delivery process, there will be people who will try to snatch the treasures? Fan Shouwu nodded. That's for sure. There are many people who want to obtain treasures, but are unwilling to spend money. They want to intercept the treasures halfway and use them for themselves. After hearing Fan Shouwu's words, Zhang Ming laughed coldly. If there really is someone who dares to rob me, then they should think carefully. After persuading for a long time, Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Ming was unmoved, so he could only sigh and say, actually, these human experts more or less still care about morality. However, if they want to obtain treasures, they will have to face many powerful magical beasts or immortal beasts. Their strength is probably even more powerful. Even human experts don't dare to face them lightly. It is also because of this that treasures are called treasures. Because no one can obtain them, they have to spend gold coins to buy them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Zhang Ming heard this and nodded. Fan Gongzi, I understand what you're saying, but I can tell you the truth. What you're saying is not a big deal to me. At this point, Zhang Ming turned to Fan Shouwu and said with a smile, the information I asked you to find out is a big deal to me. After Fan Shouwu heard Zhang Ming's words, he was somewhat stunned. He felt that after persuading him for so long, he actually didn't listen to a single word. Thinking of this, Fan Shouwu helplessly shook his head and said with a bitter smile, since the fierce brothers have already thought of this, then I won't try to persuade you. I hope that you will be more careful in the future and don't get yourself into trouble. Along the way, the group didn't encounter any more powerful monsters. They just kept moving forward and soon arrived at the place where they met Zhang Ming. Fan Shouwu pointed to a mountain in front of them and said with a smile, the fierce brothers, in front of us is the place where we met. Let's part here. 5 days later, let's meet at a restaurant in Green City. What do you think? Zhang Ming nodded and said, all right, let's meet at a restaurant in Sianwood City in 5 days. Fan Shouwu cupped his fists toward Zhang Ming. Brother Ming, goodbye then. After saying this, Fan Shouwu waved his hand at the guard behind him and walked in another direction. Following the disappearing figures of Fan Shouwu and the others, Zhang Ming turned his head to look at the situation around him before walking back in the direction he came from. Although it was said that he was going back, it wasn't that smooth. Zhang Ming had come here because he was lost. If he were an ordinary person, it would be very difficult for him to return. However, Zhang Ming was not an ordinary person. He first found the big tree that he had knocked down and carefully recalled the direction he came from. Only then did he lead Carter in that direction. After walking for a short distance, Zhang Ming discovered a problem. Carter was walking too slowly. Although he was already panting from walking, in Zhang Ming's eyes, he still didn't have any speed. Zhang Ming thought for a moment, then grabbed Carter and jumped onto the treetops. He leapt in the direction he came from. Carter was carried in Zhang Ming's hands. Feeling this unparalleled speed, he was almost scared out of his wits. At this speed, once he crashed into something, he would definitely be smashed to pieces. Carter only felt that the scenery around him had become one, and he could no longer tell what was there. In his eyes, there was only a patch of white left around him, and because he was moving too fast, there were gusts of wind that were stirred up. The gusts of wind were so strong that Carter felt as if there were countless small knives stabbing him. In the beginning, he could still grit his teeth and bear with it. However, in the end, he could no longer bear it and started to wail. Hearing Carter's wails and seeing his miserable state, Zhang Ming immediately reacted and hurriedly slowed down. Only then did Carter feel much better. The two of them moved as fast as lightning. Zhang Ming got lost a few more times, but he quickly adjusted his direction. After an unknown period of time, Zhang Ming finally saw a familiar scenery. Looking at the two ox-like mountains in the distance, Zhang Ming was slightly relieved. He might not recognize the other places, but he knew those two mountains very well. The reason why Twin Oxes Mountain was called Twin Oxes Mountain was because from afar, it really looked like two oxes with their heads and tails connected, forming a valley. Since he had found his stronghold, Zhang Ming was no longer in a hurry. He slowly slowed down and put down Carter. Carter's feet stepped on the ground. Just as he was about to speak, he felt the world spin. He staggered 2 steps and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Zhang Ming helped him stabilize his body. The speed just now was too fast. It was even more thrilling than a roller coaster. After sitting on the roller coaster for so long, Carter's physique was already good enough that he did not throw up. The terrain of Twin Oxes Mountain was very good. The peaks on both sides were like 2 oxes guarding the 2 sides. The tails of the 2 oxes were connected, forming a valley. The 2 oxes' heads were facing each other, forming a passageway. Back in the day, Zhang Ming's father, Zhang Hongtai, had gotten someone to build a door between the 2 oxes, forming a stronghold. Overall, Twin Oxes Mountain was a place that was easy to defend and difficult to attack. If the enemy wanted to attack, they could only attack through the front door. The other 3 sides were steep cliffs. It was impossible to attack from these 3 sides. Although this place was considered a desolate place, and basically no one came here, there were 4 young men taking turns guarding the entrance of the stronghold every day to prevent outsiders from entering. Zhang Ming had just walked to the entrance of the stronghold when the door was opened. Before he could see anyone, a voice came from inside. "Brother Ming, you're finally back. Everyone is worried sick." As soon as the voice fell, the door of the stronghold was opened. Chen Tao walked out quickly with a face full of joy. "Brother Ming, where have you been these few days? Why didn't you come back and tell us?" Zhang Ming smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "It's okay. I'm an adult. Are you worried that I'll get lost?" After Chen Tao and Zhang Ming finished talking, Chen Tao suddenly saw Carter behind Zhang Ming. He was shocked. "Brother Ming, who is he? Why does he look like someone from the Magic Empire?" Zhang Ming smiled and nodded. "You have good taste. His name is Carter. He is indeed from the Magic Empire. From now on, he will also be a member of our stronghold." After hearing Zhang Ming's words, Chen Tao was a little confused. After a while, he asked hesitantly, "Brother Ming, are you saying that he will also join our stronghold?" Chapter 92. After hearing Chen Tao's words, Zhang Ming smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "That's right. From now on, Carter is our brother." Hearing this, Chen Tao didn't stand on ceremony. He stepped forward and shook hands with Carter before introducing himself. "My name is Chen Tao. My father is the 2nd chief here. If you need anything, feel free to tell me." Hearing this, Carter quickly nodded. "My name is Carter." After the 3 of them exchanged pleasantries, Zhang Ming said to Chen Tao, "Go back immediately and tell the other chiefs to wait for me in the hall. Tell them that I have something to announce." Hearing this, Chen Tao quickly nodded. Then, he turned and ran back into the village. Seeing that Chen Tao had left, Zhang Ming also led Carter to the hall of the village. By the time Zhang Ming arrived at the main hall, the 4 fort masters were already waiting there. Seeing Zhang Ming enter the hall, the 4 chiefs didn't dare to slight him. Although they were all Zhang Ming's uncles, Zhang Ming was the chief after all. He was the leader of this village. They still had to abide by the rules of etiquette. As soon as Zhang Ming entered the hall, he saw the 4 chiefs coming to greet him. He hurriedly waved his hand. "Uncles, let's sit down and talk." Chen Zhongxiong was about to speak when he saw Carter behind Zhang Ming. He was shocked. With just one look at Carter's attire and appearance, It was obvious that he wasn't from the Anwu Empire. Qin Zhongxiong wasn't that young man Qin Tao. He was the second chief of the village. Now that an outsider had entered the village, how could he not pay attention? Although there wasn't anything valuable in the village, it was still the place where everyone lived. If something happened, it wasn't something they wanted to see. Looking at Carter, Qin Zhongxiong asked curiously, "Chief, who is this person? Why is he here?" After hearing Qin Zhongxiong's words, Zhang Meng remembered that he hadn't introduced Carter to them. "Uncle Chun, this is my attendant, Carter. He will be part of the village from now on." Hearing this, Qin Zhongxiong was stunned. Qin Tao couldn't see through Carter's depth, but Qin Zhongxiong could see it clearly. The aura that Carter exuded as he walked was definitely not that of an ordinary person. In his opinion, Carter was definitely an expert, and perhaps an expert that was not weaker than him. How could such a person become Zhang Meng's follower? Qin Zhongxiong had watched Zhang Meng grow up. Qin Zhongxiong was very clear about his capabilities. It was really strange that someone like Carter could become Zhang Meng's follower. It's just that, although it's strange, it was strange, but Zhang Meng was the chief of the bandit group after all. There were some things that could not be said face to face. Qin Zhongxiong decided that after today's meeting was over, he had to get to the bottom of it. The fort masters exchanged some pleasantries before returning to their respective seats. Seeing that everyone was seated, Zhang Meng also quickly walked to the seat in the middle and sat down. After sitting down, Zhang Meng raised his head to look at the 5 fort masters and said with a smile, "I came back this time because I have something important to discuss with you all." At this point, Zhang Meng looked around at everyone present and stopped talking. Seeing that Zhang Meng didn't speak, Second Fort Master Qin Zhongxiong suddenly stood up and asked with some confusion, "Chief, what do you want to discuss?" Zhang Meng said, "During this period of time, I also looked at the terrain of the village and found that the terrain here is too high. There is no water source, so it's not suitable for planting crops. So, I think we should do something else to maintain everyone's livelihood." As soon as Zhang Meng finished speaking, 5th Fort Master Feng Yongfu suddenly stood up and said loudly, "Chief, there are so many of us. If we don't plant crops, what can we do?" 4th Fort Master by Tiansheng also stood up and sighed. "That's right. At first, I thought this was a good place. It's surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, and only one side has an exit. This kind of terrain is easy to defend and hard to attack. Even if bandits came to attack us, they wouldn't be able to break in. But who would have thought that the terrain here is so bad? Not only is the crop yield low, but it's also always dry." Sigh. In the end, Bai Tianxing let out a long sigh and ended his speech. 3rd Fort Master He Wenliang's eyes suddenly lit up. He slammed the table and stood up abruptly. "Chief, are you going to bring us to do something?" Zhang Meng smiled and shook his head. "Of course not. Why would I bring you all to do something like that?" Qin Zhongxiong looked at Zhang Meng with some confusion. "Chief, if we're not going to do something, then what do you want us to do?" Zhang Meng turned to look at Qin Zhongxiong and said with a smile, "I've been thinking about it for a while now. While I was away, I've already made up my mind. I'm going to build a large-scale auction house on Mount Shuangniu to maintain everyone's livelihood." After Qin Zhongxiong heard Zhang Meng's words, he was a little stunned. Although he had not seen much of the world, he had heard of places like auction houses. After being stunned for a while, Qin Zhongxiong asked with some confusion, "Chief, are you sick?" 5th Fort Master Feng Yongfu acted as if he did not hear what Zhang Meng said just now. He only allowed a long sigh. "Chief, there's not much food left in the fort. I think we won't be able to hold on for much longer." After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, Qin Zhongxiong also nodded. "That's right. Chief, what we should be thinking about now is to solve the current problem. It's only early spring now. If we want to wait for the food to be harvested, we'll have to wait for half a year before we can harvest the food in the fields. How are we going to survive this half a year? Are we going to let everyone starve for half a year?" When Zhang Meng heard that, he did not say anything. He directly took out the gold coins and bills that he had obtained and handed them to Carter, who was standing beside him, indicating for him to take them over. Carter quickly took the gold coins and bills and quickly walked in front of Chen Zhongxiong to pass them to him. Chen Zhongxiong took the things that Carter handed over. When he took a closer look, he was immediately shocked. At this moment, the other fort masters also came forward to check the things in Chen Zhongxiong's hands. When he saw them clearly, Feng Yongfu could not help but reach out to take the gold coins. However, Chen Zhongxiong raised his head and looked at Zhang Meng. He asked with some confusion, "Chief, where did you get these gold coins?" When Zhang Meng heard that, he said disapprovingly, "I earned them." Earned them. When Chen Zhongxiong heard that, he did not believe it. If it was so easy to earn gold coins, they would not have to starve. Moreover, Zhang Meng was a child. It was really strange that he could earn so many gold coins in just 5 or 6 days. Seeing that Chen Zhongxiong was going to ask more questions, Zhang Meng quickly waved his hand, indicating for him to stop asking. "Uncle Chen, don't ask about this. I'll explain it to you later. Now, I have something more important to discuss with you." Something more important? Looking at the gold coins in his hand, Chen Zhongxiong was puzzled. Could there be more gold coins? Chapter 93. After listening to Zhang Meng's words, everyone's eyes turned from the gold coins to Zhang Meng. Zhang Meng saw that everyone was looking at him, so he said with a smile, "With these gold coins, I think we can buy some food to last for a while. During this time, we can start to build the village and turn it into the largest auction house. At that time, everyone will naturally not have to worry about food and clothing. We also don't have to worry about the lack of water and the lack of production in the fields." Since the conversation had reached this point, Chen Zhongxiong coughed softly and then asked, "Head Chieftain, are you serious?" Zhang Meng heard this and nodded. Seeing Zhang Meng nod, Chen Zhongxiong asked, "Head Chieftain, do you know what an auction house is for?" Zhang Meng nodded again. Chen Zhongxiong continued, "Let's not talk about how difficult it is to build an auction house and how much money is needed. Let's talk about what we should auction after the auction house is built." Zhang Meng said, "Naturally, we should auction some treasures and the like." Chen Zhongxiong said, "But we don't have any treasures or the like to auction." Zhang Meng smiled and shook his head. "Uncle Chen, you don't have to worry about these things. I naturally have a way." Chen Zhongxiong heard this and hurriedly said again, "Head Chieftain, those treasures are not something that people like us can obtain. Even if you have the opportunity to obtain a treasure, can you rely on a treasure alone to support an auction house?" After listening to Chen Zhongxiong's words, Bai Tiansheng also advised, "Head Chieftain, it's really not that easy to open an auction house. First of all, our location is remote and not many people know about it. If there are no good treasures, who will come here to auction things? Also, for example, even if we have a good treasure, what if someone wants it?" When Zhang Meng saw that Bai Tiansheng wanted to continue, he quickly waved his hand and said, "Fourth uncle, don't worry. I've already thought of these things. Whether it's the problem of supply or the problem of sales, I've already thought of a solution. As for the problem of safety, you don't have to worry. When the time comes, I'll hire a lot of experts to protect this place. You can rest assured about this." Hearing this, Chen Zhongxiong hurriedly said, "Chief, things are really not as simple as you think. Let's just talk about safety. With our status, what kind of experts can we invite? Can these experts really protect our safety?" Zhang Meng saw that these people were determined not to open an auction house, and in his heart, he knew what they were thinking. If he hadn't transmigrated, what they said was true. However, with her around, these problems were no longer a problem. However, how could he convince them that he had the ability to do so? Thinking of this, Zhang Meng looked around, then looked at Chen Zhongxiong and asked with a smile, "Second uncle, I know that you're doing this for the good of the village, but it's different now. The village can't grow any crops, and not only that, the crops that we grow aren't enough for everyone to eat. Therefore, we have to change this situation." At this point, Zhang Meng paused for a moment before continuing. "The auction house must be opened. I've thought about it for a long time, and this is the most suitable industry for us. The terrain of Twin Ox Mountain is strategic, and this is the biggest advantage. As long as we build an auction house in the valley, even if someone wants to steal or attack, they might not be able to break in. Therefore, we just have to do our best to find a good source of supply and the problem of sales. Hearing this, Qin Zhongxiong hurriedly said, however, even if the terrain of Twin Ox Mountain is strategic, if there really are experts who come to steal the treasure, I'm afraid that the terrain alone won't be able to stop them. Zhang Ming nodded. Of course, relying on the terrain alone won't work. Therefore, we have to have the strength to protect the village. At this point, Zhang Ming stood up and walked slowly to Qin Zhongxiong with a smile. Second uncle, what kind of strength do you think we have to protect the village? After hearing Zhang Ming's words, Qin Zhongxiong didn't understand what he meant and asked curiously, Head chieftain, what do you mean? Seeing that Qin Zhongxiong didn't understand, Zhang Ming raised his hand with a smile and waved it in front of Qin Zhongxiong's face. Second uncle, I'll show you my strength now. As Zhang Ming spoke, he clenched his fist and lightly smashed it on the ground. Just as Zhang Ming's fist was about to hit the ground, a hurricane swept up in the hall. The tables and chairs in the hall were blown into the air by this hurricane and crashed into the wall, breaking into pieces and scattering everywhere. Although Qin Zhongxiong and the others' martial arts weren't bad, after being swept up by this hurricane, they couldn't help but take 4 or 5 steps back before they could stabilize themselves. When Zhang Ming's fist smashed on the ground, everyone felt the ground shake. After a while, under everyone's stunned gazes, the place where Zhang Ming's fist landed had already become a deep pit. In the blink of an eye, everyone heard a splash of water and a stream of water sprayed out from the deep pit into the hall. Looking at this fountain, Zhang Ming frowned and hurriedly stomped his feet. The exit of the big pit was immediately covered by mud, and the fountain disappeared before everyone's eyes. Seeing this scene, everyone felt as if they were in a dream. They looked at the remaining traces of the big pit in the hall with some disbelief. In the dilapidated hall, there was no sound at all at this moment. Everyone was staring blankly at the big pit. Although Carter had long known that Zhang Ming's strength was tyrannical, he didn't expect it to be tyrannical to this extent. If he could create a big pit with one punch, he could do it if he had enough strength. However, the big pit that Zhang Ming created was absolutely different. It was impossible to create this kind of damage by relying on strength alone. When the water sprayed out from the pit just now, Carter clearly saw that the big pit that Zhang Ming created was only 1 step wide. Not only that, it was actually so deep. This meant that the pit went all the way to the ground, and the surroundings of the pit were not affected by the tyrannical power of the pit. How much control did one need to have in order to make this pit look like this? Not only had Carter never seen such a person, he had never even heard of such a person. Qin Zhongxiong and the others were even more shocked. Zhang Ming had been practicing martial arts with his father since he was a child. Naturally, everyone was very clear about what kind of martial arts he had learned. Although they all admired Big Brother Zhang Ming's martial arts, it was only admiration. Only now did they realize that Big Brother, who could teach Zhang Ming such martial arts, was not as simple as he seemed on the surface. At this moment, everyone's admiration for Zhang Hongtai had turned into admiration. Seeing that everyone was silent, Zhang Ming slowly walked in front of Qin Zhongxiong and said with a smile, Second uncle, what do you think of my strength? Chapter 94. After Zhang Ming's punch caused a fountain to erupt in the hall, he went to Qin Zhongxiong and asked, Second uncle, how is my strength? When Qin Zhongxiong heard Zhang Ming's question, he finally reacted. He wiped the water off his forehead and turned his dull eyes to Zhang Ming. He asked in surprise, Head chieftain, who taught you martial arts? Zhang Ming smiled and said, Of course it was my father. Have you ever seen me learn martial arts from anyone else? Qin Zhongxiong shook his head and said, No, I haven't. Zhang Ming said, Second uncle, if I open an auction house here, do you think I can protect our village with my strength? Qin Zhongxiong nodded blankly and then said with a bitter smile, I was worried that we weren't strong enough and that opening an auction house would lead to a disaster. Now it seems that there shouldn't be a problem. He Wenliang suddenly came forward and asked doubtfully, Head chieftain, I've also practiced martial arts with Big Brother. Although his martial arts are much better than mine, it's not as strong as yours. Zhang Meng smiled and nodded, saying, "Third uncle, you're right." At this point, Zhang Meng looked at He Wenliang and said seriously, "Third uncle, you have to know that everyone has different talent and cultivation speed. Take me, for example. I'm definitely a 1 in a million martial arts experts. In such a short time, I've already mastered the martial arts that my family practiced. Not only that, I've also reached the peak. That's why I'm so strong." When He Wenliang heard this, he excitedly grabbed Zhang Meng and asked loudly, "Head chieftain, are you saying that you've only practiced the martial arts that your family has passed down in your family? It's because you're talented that you can cultivate to this level?" Zhang Meng nodded. He didn't understand why He Wenliang was so excited. When He Wenliang saw Zhang Meng nod, he asked again, "If a talented person practices the martial arts that my family has passed down in my family, can he also reach this level?" Zhang Meng was stunned. How would he know? However, he still nodded. "It should be possible. I don't know. I've never practiced third uncle's martial arts." At this time, Bai Tiansheng and Feng Yongfu also came over and surrounded Zhang Meng. When Zhang Meng saw that everyone had gathered around, he said loudly, "Since no one has any objections, I've decided that from tomorrow onwards, we'll start preparing for the auction house." As soon as Zhang Meng's voice, Feng Yongfu said, "Head chieftain, even if you have the strength, you don't have enough gold coins. The gold coins that you took out, if used to buy food, can help everyone survive for a while, but if used to build the auction house, I'm afraid it won't be enough." When Zhang Meng heard this, he turned to look at Feng Yongfu and said with a smile, "Those gold coins will be used to buy food for everyone. As for the gold coins needed to build the auction house, I'll get it back for everyone within 5 days. In these few days, everyone should think about what kind of auction house to build." At this point, Zhang Meng looked around and continued, "I don't have any requirements. The auction house must be big and good. I want to build it to be the largest auction house in the world so that everyone who wants to buy good things will come to my auction house to buy." After listening to Zhang Meng's words, the few chieftains were excited at first, but then they became a little embarrassed. After a while, Chen Zhongxiong said, "Head chieftain, if you want us to build a house, it's not a problem. I guarantee that the house will be strong and spacious. However, if you want to build an auction house, it doesn't seem to be possible." When Zhang Meng heard this, he realized that they were all the same. His chieftains were all country bumpkins. If they were to design the style of the auction house, they might not be able to design it well. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng nodded. "In that case, I'll draw a blueprint for you, and then you can find someone to build it. That should be fine, right?" Chen Zhongxiong heard this and quickly nodded. Then he asked with some doubt, "Head chieftain, can you design it well?" Zhang Meng nodded. "Don't worry, it's definitely not a problem." Seeing that no one had anything else to say, Zhang Meng waved his hand and said, "Since that's the case, let's go back and think about how to build our auction house." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, the chieftains turned around and walked out of the door as if they were in a dream. Looking at their backs, Zhang Meng suddenly shouted, "That's right, there's no need to fix this hall. It's going to be torn down anyway." The chieftains walked out of the hall. As the mountain breeze blew, their minds became clearer. Chen Zhongxiong turned around and looked at the hall behind him. Then he turned around and said to his brothers, "I hunted a rabbit yesterday. Tonight, let's go to my place for a drink." When the chieftains heard Chen Zhongxiong's words, they all nodded in tacit understanding. Today's events had stunned everyone. Before they could react, Zhang Meng had already chased them out. Until now, the 4 chieftains still felt like they were in a dream. When Zhang Meng saw that the chieftains had gone back, he also walked out of the hall and walked towards his house. Zhang Meng was not the chieftain because his father had passed away, so he passed the chieftain position to him. It was because his father had left home for so many years that he wanted to go back and take a look. Zhang Hontai was also a straightforward person. When he thought of doing it, he would do it. Thus, he brought his wife home. When he left, he told everyone that Zhang Meng would be the chieftain from now on. Although passing the chieftain position to Zhang Meng was a bit of a joke, the brothers understood why he did it. First of all, Zhang Hontai was only going back to his hometown to take a look. If the conditions there were good, he would naturally let everyone go back. If the conditions were not good, Zhang Hongtai would still return to the village. At that time, the chieftain position would still be Zhang Hongtai's. After all, Zhang Hongtai was not very old. If he was the chieftain, he could at least be the chieftain for 20 to 30 years. If the chieftain position was passed to someone else, what if Zhang Hongtai came back? Wouldn't there be no position? It was also because of these reasons that Zhang Meng became the chieftain of Twin Ox Mountain. Zhang Meng was the only one in his house. Of course, as the young master and chieftain, he would definitely have a servant to serve him. That servant was Wang Chong. Wang Chong was an orphan. He was 16 years old this year. When his mother brought him to the mountain pass of Twin Ox Mountain, she died of illness, and he was taken away by Zhang Hongtai. Zhang Hongtai was Wang Chong's savior and had raised him since he was young. Wang Chong was naturally loyal to Zhang Hongtai and took good care of Zhang Meng. As the chief of the mountain stronghold, the place he lived in was naturally not bad. He had a small courtyard and a spacious house. The furniture in the house was also much better than other houses. It could be said that this was the best place on Mount Shuangni. Chapter 95. Wang Chong was sweeping the dust in the courtyard. When he looked up, he happened to see Zhang Meng walking into the courtyard. He hurriedly threw down the broom and greeted him. "Brother Meng, you're back. Have you eaten?" Zhang Meng waved his hand and said with a smile, "Xiao Chong, you don't have to worry about me. You do your thing." As he spoke, Zhang Meng had already walked towards his room. As soon as he returned to his room, Zhang Meng began to rummage through his room. He wanted to find something like a pen and paper. To build an auction house, he still needed to design a blueprint. To be honest, Zhang Meng also wanted to understand why he did not build his own auction house in the style he liked. However, Zhang Meng searched for a long time and did not find a pen or paper. Looking at the room that had been searched, Zhang Meng had no choice but to poke his head out of the courtyard and shout at Wang Chong. "Xiao Chong, where are my ink, paper, and inkstone?" After hearing Zhang Meng's shout, Wang Chong could not help but frown and replied loudly, "Young master, didn't you throw away the ink, paper, and inkstone?" "I threw it away." Zhang Meng heard this and could not help but scratch his head and continue awkwardly. "Is that so? Then find me some more." Wang Chong heard this and immediately put down the broom in his hand and said with a smile, "Young master, you don't have ink, paper, and inkstone here. Why don't I go to the master's place and get you some?" Zhang Meng nodded. "Go quickly, I need it urgently." In the evening, several fort masters were invited to Chen Zhongxiong's house. Several fort masters sat at the table and saw the 2 plates of pickled wild vegetables on the table. They were a little stunned. Where was the rabbit meat that was promised? Chen Zhongxiong saw that everyone's gaze was a little strange and could not help but smile awkwardly. "I went to the mountain and walked around, but I did not see the shadow of the rabbit. So, I can only treat everyone to a bite tonight." Speaking of this, Chen Zhongxiong took out a wine jar from under the table and placed it on the table. He said with a smile, "Although there are no dishes, I have wine." "Wine? Second brother, where did you get the wine?" Looking at the wine jug on the table, He Wenliang could not help but gulp. Among the few bandit chiefs, He Wenliang was the only one who was an alcoholic. Chen Zhongxiong said with a smile as he slapped the mud seal away. "Third brother, you don't have to worry about where the wine came from. Today, just drink." With wine, the atmosphere naturally became more lively. After everyone had downed a bowl of wine, the topic shifted to the main purpose of today's gathering. Bai Tianxing looked at Chen Zhongxiong at the wine table and asked doubtfully, "Second brother, why do I feel like the chief has changed into a different person?" He Wenliang swallowed the wine in his mouth and nodded. "Yes, it's just a little different. In the past, when this kid saw us, he didn't speak well, but now it's really a little different." Chen Zhongxiong looked at his brothers and said strangely, "Yeah, especially the strength he displayed today. It's simply too shocking." Speaking of Zhang Meng's strength, Feng Yongfu, who had always been cautious, said, "Our crops have always been poor because of the high terrain and the lack of water. But today, little Mengzi made a fountain in the hall. Think about it. How deep did he have to go to make water come out? Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. Huan Liang pinched his chin and asked with some doubt, "Today, when I asked little Mengzi about his martial arts practice, his answer also made me feel very strange. He said that he practiced his family's martial arts, but I'm afraid that all of us have fought with Big Brother before. Do you think that Big Brother's martial arts are so strong?" After hearing Huan Liang's words, everyone shook their heads. Bai Tianxiang said, "Although Big Brother's martial arts are a little stronger than ours, it's not to this extent. Second brother, you've been with Big Brother the longest. You should be the clearest about Big Brother's strength. Do you think his martial arts are so strong?" After hearing Bai Tianxing's words, Chen Zhongxiang shook his head. "No, Big Brother's martial arts can't be so strong. Not to mention making a big hole in the ground. Even making a small hole would be very difficult." Feng Yongfu stroked his beard and said thoughtfully, "Head chieftain said that the martial arts he practiced were passed down in his family. The reason why he is so strong is because he has a high talent for martial arts. That's why he can practice so strong." Speaking of this, Feng Yongfu glanced at everyone. Head chieftain said that he could practice his family's martial arts to this extent. Do you believe it? After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, the few chieftains looked at each other and then shook their heads. Seeing that everyone was shaking their heads, Wang Yongfu continued, "I don't think so too. I think that the reason why head chieftain's martial arts are so strong must be related to the time he was away." When Huan Liang heard this, he couldn't help but ask, "You're saying that little Mengzi had a fortuitous encounter during this period of time?" Feng Yongfu nodded. "That's the only explanation that can explain why his martial arts are so strong." Bai Tianxiang also nodded. "That's true. Before little Mengzi left, his martial arts didn't seem to be so strong. Could it be like what Fifth Brother said, that he had a fortuitous encounter?" After listening to everyone's discussion, Chen Zhongxiang was silent for a long time before he slowly said, "That's the only explanation that can explain why his martial arts have become so strong." Speaking of this, Chen Zhongxiang gently tapped the table with his finger before he continued. "The main reason I've gathered everyone here is to talk about the auction house. What do you all think?" As soon as Chen Zhongxiang's voice fell, Feng Yongfu had already said, "No matter what you want to do, in short, the gold coins that little Mengzi brought back must not be touched. I've already thought about it. I'll go down the mountain tomorrow and exchange all these gold coins for food to transport back. This will save everyone from starvation." After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, everyone laughed. Huan Liang said, "Fifth brother, you're afraid of starvation. Didn't little Mengzi say today that he will think of a way to pay for the expenses of building the auction house? He won't touch those gold coins." Feng Yongfu heard this and said, "No matter what, these gold coins must not be touched. They can only be exchanged for food." Chen Zhongxiang saw that everyone was digressing from the topic again, so he quickly tapped the table again. "The problem of food will go by tomorrow. What I want to talk about now is the auction house." Speaking of this, Chen Zhongxiang continued, "Although none of us have seen an auction house, we've all heard of it. I think that if we want to build a large auction house, whether it's in terms of various expenses, goods, sales, or safety, I just want to ask you now, do you think that with head chieftain's strength, there will be a problem to open this auction house?" Chapter 96. After listening to Chen Zhongxiang's words, everyone fell into silence. After a long while, Huan Liang slowly said, "I don't know if you guys noticed, but little Mengzi made a big hole in the hall." Chen Zhongxiang nodded. "I saw it." Huan Liang said, "Second brother, what do you think of that hole?" Chen Zhongxiang narrowed his eyes, as if he was recalling the big hole in the hall. After a long while, he slowly said, "That hole is straight up and down, without damaging the surrounding soil. And to be able to make such a deep hole, needless to say, I have never seen or even heard of such skill." Huan Liang nodded. "Indeed, there are many people who can make a big hole, but to be able to make a hole like that, I think there are not many." When they were in the hall, Feng Yongfu had been looking at his gold coins, so he really did not notice the shape of the hole. At this moment, when he heard Chen Zhongxiang and Huan Liang talking about it, he asked with some doubts. What's the difference between the hole made by little Mengzi and the hole made by others? Chen Zhongxiong heard and nodded. To be able to make a big hole, one's fist must be incomparably fierce, and the power of this punch is very terrifying. But little Mengzi's punch is not only strong, even the control of the punch has reached the point where he can control it as he pleases. He Wenliang continued. To be able to make a big hole and a straight-up hole are two different concepts. The difference between the two is simply the difference between heaven and earth. Feng Yongfu heard and was suddenly shocked. Doesn't this mean that little Mengzi's martial arts is quite powerful? Chun Zhongxiong nodded. Indeed, with the power of his punch, I think very few people would be able to take it. When everyone heard this, they secretly nodded. To be able to make such a big hole, if I were to transfer this power to anyone, I'm afraid really not many people would be able to take this punch. Bai Tiansheng picked up the wine bowl and gently drank a mouthful. After swallowing the wine, he slowly said, Little Mengzi's martial arts, is it really the family martial arts of Big Brother? Chen Zhongxiong glanced at Bai Tiansheng. Fourth brother, what are you worried about? Bai Tiansheng smiled. Second brother, you know what I'm worried about? After hearing Bai Tiansheng's words, Chen Zhongxiong reached out and patted him on the shoulder. Fourth brother, don't worry. We watched Xiao Meng grow up. He won't do anything bad. Fourth brother, do you still think that little Meng will come to deal with us? At this point, Chen Zhongxiong turned to look at the crowd before continuing. As you can see, little Meng wants to build an auction house in Mount Shuangyu. Do you understand what he means? Everyone shook their heads when they heard this. When Chen Zhongxiong saw that everyone was shaking their heads, he could not help but sigh. He lifted the wine bowl in front of him and drained it in one gulp. I think the reason why little Meng wants to build an auction house in Twin Ox Mountain is because he doesn't want us to go around plundering. When everyone heard this, they were all stunned. He Wenliang was the first to ask, Second brother, what do you mean? Chen Zhongxiong said, Actually, when Big Brother built this mountain stronghold, he didn't really want to be a bandit and rely on plundering to make a living. Instead, he wanted everyone to farm the land and harvest some food to sustain their lives. Now, it can't be maintained anymore. Do you still remember? A few days ago, we were still discussing going out to do something. Today, little Meng wants us to build an auction house in the mountain stronghold. At this point, Chen Zhongxiong sighed. Little Meng doesn't want us old bones to do that kind of thing. When everyone heard this, they nodded. If Zhang Meng had not stopped them that day, they might have really set off. Seeing that everyone understood what he meant, Chen Zhongxiong lifted the wine bowl in front of him and looked at his brothers. Brothers, we appreciate little Meng's good intentions. So, I think, first, we shouldn't ask about little Meng's martial arts. Second, I hope that everyone will fully support little Meng in what he wants to do. When he Wenliang heard this, he hurriedly lifted the wine bowl in front of him and said, Second brother, you worry too much. Little Meng is not leading us to do bad things. Why shouldn't we support him? Bai Tianxing also said, Yes, Brother Rang, we watched little Meng grow up. Although this child is not very smart, he is definitely not a bad child. What he wants to do is for the good of the mountain stronghold. Naturally, we will fully support him. When Feng Yongfu saw that everyone had expressed their stance, he hurriedly said, Brothers, I have nothing to say. Since you all support little Mengzi, I naturally won't fall behind. However, I have to say that the gold coins that little Mengzi took out must all be exchanged for food in Signwood City tomorrow. Let's first maintain everyone's food and clothing. As for other things, I fully support you. After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, Chen Zhongxiong could not help but laugh. Fifth brother, you are really a miser. I also think that no matter how many gold coins are in your hands, I am afraid that they will never come out again. Haha. Feng Yongfu heard Chen Zhongxiong's ridicule and did not take it seriously. He still laughed and said, No matter what, there are so many people in the mountain stronghold. They're all our fellow villagers. Since they trust us, we must not let them starve. Even if you call me a miser, I don't care. As long as everyone is full, you can say whatever you want. I don't care. Everyone burst into laughter when they heard this. After everyone laughed, Chen Zhongxiong raised his wine bowl in front of Feng Yongfu and said with some emotion, "Fifth brother, thank you for being so careful all these years. Otherwise, I am afraid that the mountain stronghold would have starved long ago." Hearing this, Huan Liang also raised his wine bowl and came over. "Fifth brother, I also toast you with this bowl of wine. I hope that a miser like you will have more money in your hands. That way, we will not have to worry about starvation anymore." Bai Tiansheng was the closest to Feng Yongfu. He patted Feng Yongfu's shoulder and said with a smile, "No matter what, you are the most attentive among us. Naturally, you will have to take care of these things." Seeing that his brothers were so polite, Feng Yongfu also hurriedly raised his wine bowl and said with a smile, "Thank you, brothers, for your trust. I also hope that the more gold coins I have in my hands, the better life of everyone in the mountain stronghold will be." Speaking of this, Feng Yongfu sighed. "There were a total of 521 villagers who came out with us. Up until now, there are only 306 people left. I only hope that the number of these villagers will not decrease. Otherwise, we will be letting down their trust." Hearing this, everyone's hearts sank. More than 500 people came out together. Now, there were only 300 left. Chapter 97. The next morning, after Zhang Meng had his breakfast, he climbed to the top of the mountain and began to observe the terrain of the valley. After carefully observing for a long time, Zhang Meng nodded his head in satisfaction. The valley was very large. Otherwise, the crops they planted wouldn't be enough for so many people to eat. The terrain was very flat, and it wouldn't be a problem to build any buildings in the valley. On the other hand, the safety of the valley was also very good. Zhang Meng walked around the mountain peaks on both sides and was also very satisfied. There were cliffs on both sides, and there were only 2 places that were connected together. The terrain was slightly flat, and if there were outsiders, they could enter the valley from here. Seeing this flat terrain, Zhang Meng frowned, and then decided to repair this place and turn it into a cliff. That way, the entire valley would truly become a valley that was easy to defend, but difficult to attack. Zhang Meng walked to the side of the valley and saw that it was a flat slope and looked at it for a long time. Finally, he punched out and turned the flat terrain of the mountain directly into a cliff. Seeing that no one could enter the mountain peak from here, Zhang Meng nodded his head in satisfaction and returned to the valley. Zhang Meng had just returned to the valley when he heard a hubbub of voices. A large group of people were gathered at the exit of the valley. They were talking nonstop. Because there were too many people talking, no one could hear what they were saying clearly. They could only hear a buzzing sound in their ears. In the valley, the only 3 carriages were already prepared and were waiting in front of the mountain gate. Seeing all this, Zhang Meng knew that they were going to go out to purchase food. Zhang Meng thought for a while and decided to go with them to Greenwood City to take a look. After all, he had been here for so long and hadn't been to Greenwood City yet. When Zhang Meng came in front of the crowd, Chen Zhongxiong, who had been standing at the side with a smile, hurriedly waved his hand to everyone and said loudly, "All of you shut your mouths. Can't you see that the head bandit is here?" As soon as Chen Zhongxiong's voice fell, the noise from the crowd immediately decreased. When everyone turned around and saw Zhang Meng standing behind them, all the noise disappeared. Chen Zhongxiong walked up to Zhang Meng with a smile on his face. "Head chieftain, we're going to Greenwood City to purchase food today. Do you have any instructions for me?" Zhang Meng shook his head. "Should I go with them?" Huan Liang smiled and said, "Chief, I'm just going to purchase food. It's not a big deal. You just returned, so take a good rest." Zhang Meng shook his head. "It's fine. I'll go with them." Chen Zhongxiong nodded. "Then let's go." This time, Chen Zhongxiong was personally leading the team to Cyanwood City to purchase food. He brought along all the youths from Twin Oxen Mountain. After all, the food they were purchasing this time was food that could save everyone's lives. If they were to encounter bandits on the way and steal the food, they would have nowhere to cry. 3 horse carriages, 5 head chieftains, and 18 youths were sent off by the villagers as they made their way to Greenwood City in a grandiose manner. Zhang Ming was the head chieftain, so he naturally had the right to ride in a horse carriage. Along the way, he sat in the horse carriage and pondered what he should do when he reached Greenwood City. First, of course, he had to buy food. The food in the mountain stronghold was about to be depleted. If he did not replenish some food, he might really starve. Next, there was the matter of the auction house. This was a big matter and must be handled with caution. Not only that, it must be done as soon as possible. Zhang Ming's main purpose in going to Greenwood City with everyone was to see if there were any talents in this area. He also wanted to find some craftsmen and have them work in the valley. Finally, he wanted to find out more information. When the auction house opened in the future, he would need a source of goods. However, Zhang Ming had no idea where to find the source of goods. Therefore, he had to find Fan Shouwu and ask him to provide him with some clues. In addition, there was the problem of sales. The terrain of the Twin Bull Mountain was so secretive. If it was not publicized, no one would know. Therefore, this was also a big matter. On the Anwu Empire's side, he could rely on Fan Shouwu, Zhang Xiaoming, and the others to inquire about information and the source of goods for him. Of course, most importantly, he wanted to know through Fan Shouwu, Zhang Xiaoming, and the others that the Anwu Empire needed goods. This way, he could target the goods they needed and hunt. As for the Magic Empire's side, Zhang Ming had also thought about it. Wasn't their master Gerald at the Red Mountain Peak? Although he would not be of much use, he should be very familiar with the affairs of the Magic Empire. It should not be a big deal to let him handle the affairs there. The most important thing now was that Zhang Ming did not know what the people in these two places needed. Most of the items auctioned in the auction house were cultivation items. Of course, there were also some luxury items, such as the black feather cloak. Although it did not have any defensive abilities, Zhang Ming believed that there would definitely be many people who would want to give it away or buy it for their own use. Zhang Ming had no idea about these needs at all. The reason why he stayed with Fan Shouwu and the others for so long was to learn about this. As for the Magic Empire, Zhang Ming did not know anything about it. He had not even been to the cities of the Magic Empire. How would he know? Therefore, Gerard was definitely an indispensable link. As for Carter, Zhang Ming did not think that he was better than Gerard. Although Gerard's martial arts were not as good as Carter's, in terms of interpersonal skills, Gerard was definitely better than Carter. As for the construction of the auction house, he must find a few talents in construction. As for craftsmen, of course, the more the better. The more people there were, the faster the construction would be. Sitting in the swaying carriage, Zhang Ming was deep in thought when he suddenly heard Chun Zhongxiong's shout outside the carriage. Greenwood City is already in sight. Everyone, let's work harder. We don't need a rest now. Let's go there together. Yes. After hearing Qin Zhongxiong's words, Zhang Ming also hurriedly poked his head out of the carriage. In the distance, the tall walls of Greenwood City appeared in front of Zhang Ming's eyes. Looking at the walls and the city gate in the middle of the walls, Zhang Ming sighed in his heart. After so long, they finally came to a decent city. Following Zhang Ming's sigh, the group had already arrived in front of the city gate of Greenwood City. In front of the city gate, there was a small group of people at the moment. They were carefully checking the passers-by and collecting some fees to enter and exit the city. There were many people in Zhang Ming's group, so naturally, they attracted the attention of this small group of people. However, they were all fellow villagers. After checking, these people began to count the number of people, collected the full amount of entrance fees, and let them enter the city. At this moment, Zhang Ming had already jumped out of the carriage. Since he had transmigrated, this was the first time he had entered a city. He had to observe carefully. Chapter 98. After entering the city, Zhang Ming got Qin Zhongxiong and the rest to buy food, while he brought Zhang Chong to walk around. Although Zhang Chong was young, he had been to Signwood City a few times. The reason why Zhang Ming brought him here was because he wanted him to lead the way. Looking at the endless flow of people on the streets and the many shops by the side of the road, the difference between this world and his previous world was simply too great. Regardless of whether it was the dressing of the people here, the decoration of the shops, or the ox carts and horse carriages on the streets. Zhang Ming even saw a donkey cart. Standing on this ancient street, Zhang Ming felt as though he had truly transmigrated. Although he had come into contact with many people in the Wind Forest mountain range, there were very few, and he didn't have a strong feeling. Now, he had truly come to this world. After walking around for a while, Zhang Ming finally remembered why he was here. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming turned to look at Zhang Chong. "Xiao Chong, where can I find people who can build houses?" Zhang Chong heard this and shook his head. "I don't know. I've been here a few times. If I'm not selling things, I'm buying things. I haven't been anywhere else." "Is that so?" Zhang Ming was a little disappointed when he heard this. Looking at the huge Signwood city, where should he go to find people? Suddenly, his eyes lit up. If he didn't know, he could ask. Coincidentally, at this moment, the sound of wheels rolling could be heard from behind. Zhang Ming hurriedly turned around and saw a middle-aged man driving a horse carriage over. Seeing the person driving the carriage, Zhang Ming was instantly overjoyed. He hurriedly went up to stop the carriage and asked with a smile, "Brother, if you want to build a house, where should I find people?" After hearing Zhang Ming's words, the middle-aged man's eyes lit up. He hurriedly jumped down from the carriage and cupped his hands towards Zhang Ming. "Brother, are you the one who wants to build a house?" When Zhang Ming saw this person's expression, he guessed that this person should be an artisan. "Yeah, I want to build a big house. I need to hire a lot of people. I don't know where I can find them." Hearing Zhang Ming's words, the middle-aged man's eyes became brighter. Even the corners of his mouth cracked. He said more politely, "Sir, my name is Liliozi. I'm also the craftsman you're looking for. I'm not bragging, but as long as you tell me the style of your house, I can definitely build it for you. I promise it will be strong and beautiful." Zhang Ming hurriedly interrupted Liliozi and said with a smile, "Don't brag. Tell me how many craftsmen you can find to build a house for me." Hearing this, Liliozi lowered his head and thought for a moment. After a while, he raised his head and asked carefully, "Young master, is 10 people okay?" Zhang Ming shook his head. "That's too little. The more people I can find, the better, because the house I'm building is very big." At this moment, Liliozi's face was full of smiles. Originally, he had no work to do these 2 days and was worried. He didn't expect that when he was about to go home, he would get a big job. This was a great thing. Judging from this person's posture and tone, it might take 1.5 years to build a house. Thinking of this, Liliozi had already made up his mind. Since such a big piece of meat pie had fallen from the sky, he must not let this meat pie run away. "Young master, tell me the truth. How many craftsmen do you need?" "I, Liliozi, promise to find all of them for you." Zhang Ming thought for a moment. After all, he didn't know how many people were needed to build an auction house. He only knew that the more people there were to build a house, the faster it should be. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming regretted a little. He should have brought Feng Yongfu with him to find craftsmen. Zhang Ming went forward and patted Liliozi's shoulder. "Let's go. I'll take you to see someone. You could discuss this matter." Liliozi heard this and was a little disappointed. "Young master, is the house not your house?" Zhang Ming nodded. "It is my house. However, I can't say how many people I'll use." Liliozi heard this and nodded. He asked tentatively, "Then, are we going to look for your butler now?" Zhang Ming heard this and was stunned. Then he nodded. Although Feng Yongfu wasn't his butler, his role was similar. So, it wasn't a bad idea to let him be his butler. The 3 of them sat in a carriage and went to the place where they agreed to meet Chen Zhongxiong and the others. In the carriage, Zhang Ming looked at the houses on the side of the road and wondered what kind of house he should build. What kind of house should this auction house be built in order to be unique? It should be the kind that people would be attracted to at a glance. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming patted Liliozi's shoulder and asked with a smile, "Brother, how long have you been in this business?" Liliozi lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then he stretched out 2 fingers and a palm and replied with a smile, 25 years? Zhang Ming was stunned when he heard this. After a while, he asked curiously, "Brother, how old are you this year?" Liliozi heard this and quickly shook his head. "It's not expensive. I'm 38 years old this year. Zhang Ming heard this and quickly calculated with his fingers. Then he asked in surprise, "You've been in this business since you were 13 years old?" Li Liuzi nodded. "My family was poor. When I was 13 years old, my father and I started this business." Looking at Li Liuzi's arms, even though they were not thick, they seemed to be quite strong. He must have been trained since he was young. Thinking of this, Zhang Ming patted Li Liuzi's shoulder and said with a smile, "Work hard for me, and I won't mistreat you." When Li Liuzi heard this, he quickly cupped his hands towards Zhang Ming and said, "Thank you, young master. This lowly one will do his best to build a house for you." When Zhang Ming heard this, his heart skipped a beat, and he asked, "You know how to build a house? Do you know who could design a house?" Design a house? Li Liuzi was quite confused. He did not quite understand what Zhang Ming meant. Seeing that he did not understand, Zhang Ming hurriedly explained, "It's the design of a house. I want to build the best house, so I naturally have to design the best house. How about it? Do you know who could design the best house?" Only then did Li Liuzi understand what Zhang Ming meant. He thought for a moment before replying, "Actually, if you're willing to spend money, you should be able to find someone to draw the style of the house for you." When Zhang Ming heard this, he was overjoyed. This was the result he wanted. As the saying goes, there are specializations in algebra. This was definitely the hard truth. No matter how good an outsider looked, he would not be able to design it. Zhang Ming hurriedly asked, "Brother, can you find me a few such people?" When Li Liuzi heard this, he grinned and thought to himself, "Is this person bragging? Find a few? It would be good if one of them is willing to come." Li Liuzi shook his head. "I can find many ordinary craftsmen, but I don't know anyone who could draw a house." Chapter 99. Li Liuzi was flattering himself when he said that he did not know such a person. In the entire South County, there was only one shop in South County City that specialized in drawing houses. It could be said that in the entire South County, there were only a handful of people who could invite them to draw the blueprints for their houses. Li Liuzi was an ordinary craftsman. He had probably never even seen such a person, let alone know him. Seeing Liuzi shake his head, Zhang Ming asked again, "Then do you know his name and where he lives?" Li Liuzi shook his head. "I only know that his surname is Fong, and he lives in South County. As for where he lives, I don't know." Hearing Liuzi's answer, Zhang Ming shook his head with a smile. He understood that Liuzi did not know either. Just as Zhang Ming was thinking about how to find someone to design a house for him, he suddenly heard Zhang Chong shout from the side, "Young master, the second chief and the others are right in front." Zhang Ming looked up. Sure enough, the 5 carriages in the village were full and were parked at the corner of the street. The chiefs of the village were all gathered together. No one knew what they were discussing. Zhang Ming jumped out of the carriage and walked towards the crowd. When Chen Zhongxiong saw Zhang Ming coming over, he hurriedly went up to him. "Chief, you're finally back. Let's go now." When Zhang Ming heard this, he looked up at the sky and said, "Second uncle, it's getting late. Why don't you let everyone stay here for the night? It's not safe to walk at night." Just as Chen Zhongxiong was about to answer, Feng Yongfu hurriedly shook his head and said, "No, there are so many of us. If we all stay here, it will cost a lot of money. It's better to keep the money to buy food." When Zhang Ming heard this, he hurriedly said, "But it's not safe to walk at night. If we encounter bandits, wouldn't that be terrible?" After hearing Zhang Ming's words, Chen Zhongxiong asked in confusion, "Chief, aren't you going back with us?" Zhang Ming shook his head. "I still need to find someone to draw a blueprint for the house we're going to build." Speaking of this, Zhang Ming turned his head and waved at Li Liuzi. Then he turned his head and looked at Feng Yongfu. "Fifth uncle, this is a craftsman I found. I don't know how to build a house. Anyway, you can talk with him about this matter. In these 2 days, prepare some materials and transport them back to the village. I will take this opportunity to find someone who can draw the pattern for our house." Hearing this, Feng Yongfu turned to look at Chen Zhongxiong and said, "All right, I'll talk to him. However, if we prepare the materials, I'm afraid we'll have to spend a lot of gold coins." After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, Zhang Ming smiled and waved his hand. You go back today. I'll bring the gold coins back tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. You can go buy the materials now and try to get all the materials ready. When the blueprint of the house is down, we can start immediately. Feng Yongfu nodded. Then, after thinking for a while, he pulled Zhang Meng aside and whispered, "Little Meng, I don't object to you wanting to build an auction house in the village. However, you didn't tell me how big the house is and how much gold coins you're going to spend. How do you want me to prepare the materials?" Zhang Meng thought for a while and said, "Fifth uncle, I don't know how big the house is. In short, we need to prepare a lot of materials. I think the house we're going to build this time will definitely not be small. We'll definitely need a lot of materials. Don't run out of materials when the time comes." Hearing this, Feng Yongfu raised his head and looked at Zhang Meng. After a while, he asked, "Little Meng, tell me how much gold coins you have so that I can buy the materials." Zhang Meng heard this and stretched out a finger. "Fifth uncle, I should be able to prepare 10,000 gold coins tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Is that enough?" Hearing this, Feng Yongfu was startled at first. Then he sucked in a breath of cold air. "Little Meng, don't joke with me. How many gold coins do you have? Tell me the real number." Zhang Meng was amused by Feng Yongfu's words. "Fifth uncle, why would I lie to you? If I say 10,000 gold coins, it's 10,000 gold coins. It's definitely not a small amount." Hearing Zhang Meng's affirmative answer, Feng Yongfu was silent for a while. Then he slowly said, "Little Meng, although your martial arts are very good, there are some things that you can't do. If you make a mistake, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Hearing this, Zhang Meng knew that Feng Yongfu was afraid that he would use his martial arts to do bad things. That was why he reminded him. Only his own family would remind him. If it were an outsider, who would care about this kind of thing? Thinking of this, Zhang Meng hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, "Fifth uncle, don't think too much. You watch me grow up. Am I that kind of bad person? Don't worry. I got these 10,000 gold coins from selling things." Saying this, Zhang Meng was afraid that Feng Yongfu would not believe him. So he continued to explain, "Fifth uncle, do you know about the black feather cloak?" Hearing this, Feng Yongfu nodded. "That's a good thing. I heard that after wearing it, you won't feel cold in winter or hot in summer." Saying this, Feng Yongfu suddenly stared at him. "Little Meng, do you have a black feather cloak?" Zhang Meng nodded. "Yes, I do. I exchanged the 10,000 gold coins with the feathers that could be used to make 2 black feather cloaks." 2 black feather cloaks? Hearing this, Feng Yongfu was even more surprised. He had only heard of the black feather cloak. He had never seen it before. Although he had never seen it, he had heard that the black feather cloak was not something that could be bought with money. It was something that could only be obtained with luck. Thinking of this, Feng Yongfu hurriedly asked, "Little Meng, how did you get the black feather cloak?" Zhang Meng smiled gently. "Fifth uncle, with my strength, is it difficult to hunt the nightmare eagle and get its feathers?" Hearing this, Feng Yongfu remembered the fountain in the hall of the village and could not help but nod. With Zhang Meng's terrifying strength, it should be possible for him to hunt the nightmare eagle. Seeing that Feng Yongfu had understood his meaning, Zhang Meng continued, "Don't be afraid of spending money to build the auction house. I only want the best. If the money is not enough, I will think of a way. At the very least, I can get 2 more black feather cloaks to sell. So I say, don't build a shabby auction house for the sake of saving money." Hearing this, Feng Yongfu's old face turned red. If Zhang Tai did not remind him, he might really do it. Seeing Feng Yongfu's expression, Zhang Meng was a little worried and hurriedly reminded him again. "I say, if you build a shabby auction house for the sake of saving money, don't blame me for being angry." Hearing this, Feng Yongfu hurriedly nodded and promised, "Little Meng, in the past, the village did not have money, so I saved money. Now that we have money, what are we afraid of? Don't worry. Leave the construction of the auction house to me. I will build it beautifully." Chapter 100. After hearing Feng Yongfu's guarantee, Zhang Meng was relieved. To be honest, He was really afraid that Feng Yongfu would build a shoddy project for him to save money. That would be terrible. Zhang Ming looked around and pointed to an inn next to him. I'll stay here tonight. If there's anything, you can find me here. Chun Zhongxiong and the others noted down the name of the inn and nodded in agreement. Now that the matter was settled, Chun Zhongxiong and the others did not stay any longer. They called for someone to drive the carriage out of the city. Looking at the backs of Chun Zhongxiong and the others leaving, Zhang Ming waved to Zhang Chang. Let's go to the inn first. Early the next morning, Zhang Ming led Zhang Chang out of the inn and went straight to the city lord's mansion. Last night, Zhang Ming had thought it through. He was too unfamiliar with this world. It was better to find someone who was familiar with this world to help him with this matter. Zhang Ming did not know many people. So far, other than the people in the village, he only knew 2 people in the Anwu kingdom, Fan Shouwu and Zhang Xiaoming. When they parted, they had originally agreed to meet in 5 days at the Kulai Inn and pay the gold coins on the way. Now that 3 days had passed, there were still 2 days before they met. However, Zhang Ming could not wait any longer. He decided to go to Chengzhufu to see Zhang Xiaoming and ask him to do something for him. In Zhang Ming's opinion, this should be the fastest way. The 2 of them left the inn and went straight to the city lord's mansion. Although Zhang Ming did not know the way, Zhang Chang did. The 2 of them walked along the bustling streets and soon arrived at the city lord's mansion. When the 2 of them arrived at the entrance of the city lord's mansion, they saw a carriage parked in front of the gate. Beside the carriage, there was a young man in his 20s wearing a long gown. He was directing for servants to move 2 large chests from the carriage. Zhang Ming ignored them and led Zhang Chang straight to the gates of the city lord's mansion. In front of the main gate of the city lord's mansion, there was a small team with 8 guards standing upright on both sides, closely monitoring the people entering and exiting. Zhang Ming stepped forward and cupped his fists towards the guards. May I trouble you to inform Prince Zhang Xiaoming, that I have an important matter to discuss with Prince Zhang. A guard who was standing closest to Zhang Ming glanced at Zhang Ming's clothes from the corner of his eye, then turned his head and asked casually, "What do you want?" Zhang Ming said, "I would like to ask for Prince Zhang's help." At this moment, Zhang Ming felt someone patting him. He quickly turned his head and saw the young man who was directing the servants to unload the chests, patting his shoulder with a folding fan. The young man saw Zhang Ming turn his head and smiled. "I am the young master of the Guilai restaurant, Li Wenshan. May I know who you are? What business do you have with Prince Zhang?" Zhang Ming heard this and could not help but frown. "This matter doesn't seem to have anything to do with you." Li Wenshan heard this and waved his hand. "Little brother, from the looks of it, is it that your family is short of food and you want to ask Prince Zhang to reward you with 2? Zhang Ming's attire was indeed easy to misunderstand. Li Wenshan was wearing a silk gown, looking extraordinary. Zhang Ming, on the other hand, was wearing a coarse cloth. From afar, he looked like a country bumpkin. Zhang Ming heard this and frowned even more. "What business do I have with Prince Zhang? It doesn't seem to have anything to do with you." Li Wenshan waved his hand and sneered. "I didn't guess wrong, did I? That's your purpose. Prince Zhang is busy and has no time to deal with people like you. Hurry up and go back. Otherwise, Prince Zhang will chase you away when he sees you." Zhang Ming was amused by Li Wenshan. Was this guy crazy? What did it have to do with him that he came to see Zhang Xiaoming? Li Wenshan saw that Zhang Ming did not speak and thought that he guessed right, so he continued. "In this world, there are always people who want to eat and drink for free. Whenever I see such people, I get angry." Li Wenshan's eyes turned cold. "Now, I will count to 3. Hurry up and get out of my sight." 1, 2, Li Wenshan counted. When he counted 2, he suddenly covered his face with both hands and screamed loudly. Seeing this, a few servants hurried forward and surrounded Li Wenshan to see what happened. "Young master, what happened to you?" "Ouch, ouch, my tongue. It hurts so much." After a long while, the 4 servants finally understood. It turned out that their young master was too excited just now and bit his own tongue while counting. He bit it so hard that he almost bit off the entire tip of his tongue. Li Wenshan was in so much pain that he couldn't stop screaming. His screams were so mournful that the guards of the city lord couldn't help but look over. In the end, one of the guards nodded to a guard beside him and signaled with his eyes. The guard immediately understood and hurried down the steps in front of the door. He waved his hand to Li Wunshan's servants and said loudly, "Hurry up and pull your young master to the side. What is going on with him screaming in front of the castellan's mansion? Those who don't know will think that we are bullying him." Hearing this, Li Wunshan's servants hurriedly pulled Li Wunshan to their carriage. "Young master, let's hurry up and find the doctor." At this moment, Li Wunshan was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He covered his face and wanted to reprimand the servants, but he couldn't open his mouth. He could only cover his face and run to the carriage. When he ran to the front of the carriage, Li Wunshan suddenly turned around and pointed to the two boxes that were being carried down, indicating for the servants to pull them back. The servants hurriedly lifted the boxes and put them back on the carriage. Then, they drove the carriage back the way they came. Seeing that Li Wunshan and the others had left, Zhang Meng smiled at the guard who was walking down the steps and said, "Well, now it's quiet. Can I trouble this brother to inform Prince Zhang?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, the guard turned his head to look at the leader. Seeing this, the leader of the guards turned his head to look at Zhang Meng. "Why do you want to see the young master?" Zhang Meng said, "I have some matters that I need your help with. I'll have to trouble you to inform them." "Does our young master know you?" Zhang Meng nodded. "Originally, I had an appointment with Prince Zhang to meet in 5 days at the Kulai restaurant, but I have an urgent matter to discuss with him, so I came early." Hearing this, the leader of the guards asked, "What's your name? We can go and inform him." Zhang Meng said, "You just have to tell Prince Zhang that Zhang Meng wants to see him." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, the leader of the guards signaled to the guard beside him with his eyes, telling him to go and report. Seeing that the leader had agreed, the guard didn't dare to delay and immediately turned around and ran towards the door. Chapter 101. Zhang Meng did not wait for long outside the door before the guard who went to report hurriedly ran back. "Young master invites you in." Zhang Meng nodded and followed the guard into the city lord's mansion. Soon, the guard led Zhang Meng to the small reception room in the backyard. As soon as Zhang Meng walked into the reception room, he saw Zhang Qiuming and Fan Shou welcoming him. "The fierce brothers, I thought we would have to wait 2 days before we meet again. I didn't expect to meet again so soon." Zhang Meng nodded. "I'm here to ask for your help." The three of them chatted as they sat down. After the servants served tea, Fan Shou turned to look at Zhang Qiuming. "Have you prepared the gold coins?" Zhang Qiuming nodded, took out a silver note, and handed it to Zhang Meng. "The fierce brothers, this is a total of 10,000 gold coins in silver notes. Take a look and see if the number is correct." Zhang Meng took the silver note, glanced at it, nodded, and put it away. After Zhang Meng put away the note, Fan Shou asked again, "The fierce brothers, why are you here this time?" Zhang Meng thought for a moment before saying, "You know that I want to build an auction house in Twin Bull Mountain, but no one knows how to design houses. I heard that there's a person with the surname Fong in the South Commandery who specializes in designing houses, so I want to ask you to help me invite him to design the style of the auction house." Fan Shou was stunned when he heard this before saying, "I know the person you're talking about, but the person who told you about this person definitely doesn't know about it." After Zhang Meng heard Fan Shou's words, he smiled and said, "I think so too. That's why I came here to find out what's going on." Zhang Qiuming turned to look at Fan Shou and asked doubtfully, "Could it be that he's talking about the Tianji sect?" Fan Shou nodded. "In the entire South County, only the people from the Tianji sect are the best in this aspect." When Zhang Meng heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. "Tianji sect? What kind of place is that? Do they even know how to design houses?" Fan Shou nodded. "The Heaven's Secret sect specializes in designing all kinds of houses, as well as some secret mechanisms and the like. It could be said that the Heavenly Secret sect was not only famous in South County, but they were also second to none in the entire Anwu Kingdom. The sect leader of the Tianji sect is surnamed Fong Tianji." When Zhang Meng heard this, he couldn't help but ask, "Is this Tianji sect that powerful?" Fan Shou nodded. It's indeed very powerful. 20 years ago, Feng Tianji once designed a secret passage for a treasure pavilion in the imperial capital. At this point, Fan Shou stopped talking and looked at Zhang Meng, explaining for him. The treasure pavilion in the imperial capital can be considered the largest auction house in the Anwu kingdom. There are countless rare treasures inside. Among them, there are many large families that place their treasures in the treasure pavilion for safety. In order to ensure the safety of these treasures, the treasure pavilion's owner once spent a large sum of money to hire a few top experts to guard them. Unfortunately, even though the treasure pavilion had these top experts guarding it, there were still cases of treasures being lost. Helpless, the treasure pavilion's owner invited Feng Tianji from the Heaven Secret sect to redesign the treasure pavilion. Feng Tianji did not disappoint. After spending 3 years, he finally completed the new treasure pavilion. From then on, nothing has been lost in the treasure pavilion. At this point, Zhang Qiuming also sighed. Back then, the few top experts at the treasure pavilion invited were all outstanding figures from the few large sects in the Anwu kingdom. Even so, they still couldn't see those treasures. Fan Shou nodded. This is mainly because there are too many precious items in the treasure pavilion. Too many people want to obtain these treasures. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. I once heard that 20 years ago, before Feng Tianji rebuilt the treasure pavilion, there was once a total of 21 thieves who snuck into the treasure pavilion. Furthermore, they fought with several experts who were guarding the treasure pavilion. Although the top experts' martial arts were powerful, there were too many thieves. They divided up the work and didn't want to defeat the experts. They only sent some people to restrain them, while others went to steal the treasures. At that time, the treasure pavilion suffered heavy losses. It was also because of that incident that the treasure pavilion's owner invited Feng Tianji to rebuild the treasure pavilion for them. After Zhang Qiuming heard Fan Shou's words, he also nodded. Indeed, since the new treasure pavilion was built, although there were still many thieves who went to steal the treasures, they couldn't break through the layers of mechanisms and secret passages. In the end, the good ones returned empty-handed, and the bad ones died in the mechanisms and secret passages. Since then, the treasure pavilion has never lost anything. Although there are still many people who covet the treasures in the treasure pavilion, no one has been able to successfully obtain them. After Zhang Meng heard Fan Shou and Zhang Qiuming's introduction, he was overjoyed. He wanted to build the best auction house, so there would definitely be a lot of treasures inside. If he was in the auction house, then it would be fine. No one would be able to steal anything from the auction house. However, if he wasn't in the auction house, then what should he do? Relying on the people in the mountain stronghold would definitely not work. Zhang Meng originally planned to invite a few experts to guard the auction house, so that thieves wouldn't take advantage of him when he wasn't there. Now it seemed that if he could invite Feng Tianji to design an auction house for him, then wouldn't it be the best of both worlds? Thinking of this, Zhang Meng suddenly thought of a problem. He hurriedly asked, "You said that the treasure pavilion was built 20 years ago. Then, how old is this Feng Tianji? Is he still alive?" When Fan Shou heard this, he lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "According to the time when Feng Tianji built the treasure pavilion, he was around 50 years old. Now, 20 years have passed, so he should be around 70 years old. There shouldn't be a problem. He's definitely still alive." Zhang Meng heard this and nodded. "If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble Fan Gongzi to invite Master Feng Tianji to build an auction house for me." After Fan Shou heard Zhang Meng's words, he was first stunned. Then he shook his head and smiled bitterly. "The fierce brothers, things aren't as simple as you think. There are countless disciples in the Tianji sect. It's already not easy to invite one of them to build an auction house for you. If you want to invite Feng Tianji to build an auction house for you personally, I'm afraid." Although Fan Shou didn't finish his words, Zhang Meng already understood what he meant. Seeing this, Zhang Qiuming turned to Zhang Meng and said with a smile, "The fierce brothers, actually, it's enough to invite a disciple of the Tianji sect to build an auction house for you." Chapter 102. After hearing their conversation and seeing their expressions, Zhang Meng felt that the chances of inviting Fang Tianji were very slim. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng asked tentatively, "Two young masters, if we were to invite Fang Tianji to come here personally, what are the conditions?" Fan Shouwu shook his head. It said that Fang Tianji hasn't made a move in the past 10 years. Speaking of this, Fan Shouwu's tone paused before he continued. Fang Tianji has 5 disciples, and each of them has extraordinary skills. They were considered first-class experts in the construction of secret passages. With these disciples, there's no need for Fang Tianji to make a move himself. Zhang Qiuming added, "The fierce brothers don't underestimate Fang Tianji's 5 disciples. Nowadays, there are very few people who can invite these 5 disciples. Ordinary people who can invite the 5 great disciples are not ordinary people." Zhang Meng was stunned for a moment before asking, "So, when we go to the Tianji sect to invite someone to build an auction house for us, we'll only invite Fang Tianji's disciples, grand disciple?" Fan Shouwu nodded. "That's true. The fierce brothers, it seems like you really don't know anything about the Tianji sect. I'll tell you in detail, and you'll understand. It's not easy to invite Fang Tianji's disciples, grand disciple, to build an auction house for you." Tianji sect. The sect leader of the Tianji sect, Fang Tianji, had only accepted 5 disciples in his life. Of course, this didn't mean that only his 5 disciples were talented, but that Fang Tianji had other plans. Anwu country was divided into 5 counties, which were the east, south, west, north, and central counties. After the eldest disciple, Han Daozhou, finished his studies, he established a branch of the Tianji sect in the central county of Anwu country. The second disciple, Wang Qizai, established a branch in the east county. The third disciple, Sun Xinjing, established a branch in the south county. The fourth disciple, He Xiaowang, had established a branch in the west county. The fifth disciple, Hu Daxian, had set up a branch in the north county. When Fang Tianji was young, the Tianji sect was just a small sect. It was only after his 5 disciples had completed their studies that the Tianji sect officially flourished. The 5 great disciples each established a branch in each of the 5 great counties of the Anwu country. Each of them took in a few disciples, and many people joined the Heaven Secret sect. From then on, the Heaven Secret sect officially became a large sect. Fang Tianji's 5 disciples were now the hall masters of their respective halls. It could be said that they were the top existences in the Heaven Secret sect. Ever since Fang Tianji's 5 great disciples had completed their training, he had not personally built any secret passages. As for Fang Tianji's 5 great disciples, ever since they had established branches in each county, they had disciples and followers. Naturally, they rarely took action personally. Therefore, Fan Shouwu said that it was not easy to invite Fang Tianji's grand disciple to build an auction house for him. After listening to Fan Shouwu's introduction, Zhang Meng finally understood what kind of person Li Liuzi was talking about. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng could not help but smile bitterly. After Fan Shouwu finished speaking, he looked at Zhang Meng and asked, "How is it? Now you understand what's going on in the Tianjin sect, right?" Zhang Meng nodded. "I really didn't expect that the person surnamed Fang who drew the house blueprint that Li Liuzi mentioned was actually the sect master of a large sect. It's really unexpected." Seeing that Zhang Meng understood, Fan Shouwu smiled and said, "How is it? I'm not wrong, am I? It's not easy for us to invite Fang Tianji's grand disciple." Zhang Qiuming also smiled and said, "Actually, even Fang Tianji's grand disciple is very good at building houses." At this point, Zhang Qiuming lowered his voice and said, "In the first few years, our old man invited people from the Heaven Secret sect to design a secret room. The person who came to supervise the construction of the secret room was a disciple of the South County Hall Master, Sun Xinjing." At this point, Zhang Qiuming sighed and continued, "Sun Xinjing's disciple is not old. He is only in his 20s, but his skills are definitely top-notch. After he built it, the secret room was almost impregnable. It was impossible for outsiders to enter directly. Even if they wanted to find the entrance to the secret room, it was almost impossible. At this point, Zhang Xiaoming paused. He recalled the situation at that time and continued, I still remember that the person who built the secret room for us was called Yi Xian. After the secret room was built, Yi Xian once boasted that there were no more than 10 people in the world who could find the entrance to this secret room. After Fan Shouwu heard Zhang Xiaoming's words, he smiled and nodded. He also lowered his voice and said, It seems that your old man must have spent a lot of money to build this secret room. Zhang Xiaoming nodded. It did cost a lot, but I heard from my father that although it cost a lot, it was worth it. It was definitely worth it. Fan Shouwu smiled and nodded. He turned to look at Zhang Meng. Brother, what do you think? Zhang Meng thought for a moment before saying, It seems that the people from the Heaven's secret sect are indeed quite good at building secret passages. In that case, I'm relieved. When Zhang Xiaoming heard this, he lowered his voice again and said, The fierce brothers, I think you should look for Yi Xian, who built the secret room for our family. Don't be fooled by his young age. His skills are really good. How about it? Think about it. To be honest, the person Zhang Meng wanted to invite was Fang Tianji. As for Fang Tianji's 5 disciples, Zhang Meng had never even thought about it, let alone the Yi Xian that Zhang Xiaoming mentioned. When Zhang Xiaoming saw that Zhang Meng did not speak, he smiled and clapped his hands. The fierce brothers, I know what you're thinking. However, it's really impossible for Fang Tianji to come. Even his 5 disciples won't come to build an auction house for you. So, I think you should look for this Yi Xian. Zhang Meng shook his head. I'm not very satisfied. I still want to find Fang Tianji to design an auction house for me. After Zhang Xiaoming heard Zhang Meng's words, he shook his head with a bitter smile and turned to look at Fan Shouwu. Seeing this, Fan Shouwu was also in a difficult position. Even if his father was the deputy county governor of the South County, it was impossible for him to invite the sect master of the Heaven's secret sect, Fang Tianji, to build an auction house for Zhang Meng. Fang Tianji had not built secret passages for others for many years. This was a well-known fact. Not to mention Fang Tianji, but to be able to invite Fang Tianji's 5 disciples, Fan Shouwu felt that it was a very honorable thing. However, Zhang Meng in front of him looked like he was determined to invite Fang Tianji. What should he do? Thinking of this, Fan Shouwu's eyes suddenly lit up. He turned to look at Zhang Xiaoming and said with a smile, Prince Zhang, since the fierce brothers don't believe us, we can take them to see your family's secret room. If the secret room is built well, the fierce brothers will naturally be satisfied when they see it. Chapter 103. After Zhang Xiaoming heard Fan Shouwu's words, a trace of awkwardness appeared on his face. Fan Shouwu pondered for a moment and understood Zhang Xiaoming's thoughts. He immediately smiled and said, Prince Zhang, you've misunderstood. I don't want you to lead the fierce brothers to the secret room to take a look. I only want you to lead him to that room in the secret room and let him find the entrance to the secret room. Fan Shouwu turned to look at Zhang Meng. If you can't find the entrance to the secret room, then you'll naturally know how powerful the Tianji sect is. Zhang Xiaoming heard this, and his expression softened. He pondered for a moment before nodding. That works too. However, the secret room is in the small living room of my father's living room. I can lead you there to take a look. However, you can't openly search for it. You can only search for it secretly. You mustn't let my father find out. Fan Shouwu heard this and hurriedly nodded. Prince Zhang, don't worry. We're just going to take a look. We don't really want to enter the secret room. After Zhang Xiaoming heard Fan Shouwu's words, he stood up and said in a low voice, My father isn't home at this time. We'll go there now. Fan Shouwu heard this and hurriedly stood up as well. He smiled and said, The fierce brothers, then let's go now. Zhang Meng nodded. He also wanted to see how powerful the mechanisms and secret passageways built by the Heaven's secret sect were. The 3 of them left the study and went straight to the backyard. Soon, Zhang Xiaoming led Fan Shouwu and Zhang Meng to the small living room. Actually, this small living room was connected to the living room. There was a door on one side of the living room. Behind this door was the living room of Zhang Xiaoming's parents. The purpose of this small parlor was to gossip when some relatives or female relatives came. Zhang Xiaoming came to the door of the living room. He first knocked on the door before calling out in a low voice, "Mother, are you home? A friend wants to see you." A moment later, a woman's voice came from inside the room. "Brother, you're here. I was just looking for you." Just as the voice fell, the door of the living room was opened from the inside. A 16 or 17-year-old beautiful girl walked out of the room. Zhang Xiaoming saw that it was this girl who opened the door and said with a smile, "Xiaoyu, why are you here?" After hearing Zhang Xiaoming's words, Zhao's lips curled. Her lips. "I'm here to see Mother, can't I?" Zhang Xiaoming smiled and shook his head. "It's not that you can't. I remember that you should be practicing your sword at this time." Hearing this, Xiaoyu's face stiffened. "It's none of your business." After saying this, Xiaoyu turned to look at Fan Shouwu and said with a grin, "Big brother Fan, I want to ask you for a favor." Hearing this, Fan Shouwu hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Lady Xiaoyu, if there's anything you need, just say it. As long as I can do it, I'll definitely do it for you." Hearing this, Xiaoyu pursed her lips and smiled. A trace of joy appeared on her face. "This is what you said. You can't go back on your words." Fan Shouwu nodded. "Lady Xiaoyu, as long as I can do it, I'll agree." After hearing Fan Shouwu's promise, Xiaoyu said with a grin, "Big brother Fan, do you know about the black feather cloak?" Fan Shouwu was stunned when he heard this. Immediately, he understood what Xiaoyu was thinking. Just as he was pondering over how to answer, Zhang Xiaoming had already reprimanded him. "Xiaoyu, don't cause trouble here. Fan Gongzi's black feather cloak is still very useful. Don't keep thinking about it." Hearing this, Xiaoyu said disdainfully, "I know. Doesn't Big Brother Fan just want to give it to Lady Fu? I don't want that one. Doesn't Big Brother Fan have 2 black feather cloaks? He can give one to me. Anyway, he can't wear something that only women wear." At this point, Xiaoyu turned her head to look at Fan Shouwu. "Big brother Fan, am I right?" Hearing this, Fan Shouwu didn't know how to answer for a moment. Zhang Meng had brought back a total of 60 nightmare eagle's feathers, which were enough to make 2 black feather cloaks. However, when they were at the Red Mountain Peak, Fan Shouwu had already said that these 2 black feather cloaks would be given to him and Zhang Xiaoming. His own black feather cloak must be given to Lady Fu. As for Zhang Xiaoming's black feather cloak, Fan Shouwu knew in his heart that he definitely wanted to use this black feather cloak to curry favor with some lady. Therefore, Fan Shouwu actually only had 1 black feather cloak. However, at this moment, he couldn't explain. He could only turn his head to look at Zhang Xiaoming, hoping that he could clean up this mess. Zhang Xiaoming saw Fan Shouwu's gaze and hurriedly reached out to push Xiaoyu. "Let's go inside. I still have to bring my friend to see Mother." Xiaoyu still wanted to explain, but Zhang Xiaoming pushed her all the way into the house. After entering the house, Xiaoyu didn't dare to say anything else. In the small living room, on the main seat, sat a middle-aged woman with a face full of smiles. Seeing this middle-aged woman, Zhang Xiaoming hurriedly went forward to greet her. "Mother, Big Brother Fan said that he wanted to come and greet you. Also, there's a new friend who wants to greet you." After hearing Zhang Xiaoming's introduction, Fan Shouwu also hurriedly went forward to greet her. "Greetings, madam." When Zhang Meng saw Fan Shouwu go forward to greet her, he also hurriedly went forward to greet her. "Greetings, madam." Lady Zhang hurriedly waved her hand. Looking at Zhang Xiaoming, she smiled and said, "Don't be so polite. Hurry and ask them to sit down and talk." After hearing Lady Zhang's instructions, Zhang Xiaoming hurriedly led Fan Shouwu and Zhang Meng to the left side of Lady Zhang and sat down. After everyone sat down, Lady Zhang smiled and asked, "Fan Gongzi, have you gotten used to living in the manor these past few days?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he nodded and said, "Thank you, madam, for your concern. I'm very good here." After asking Fan Shouwu, Zhang Meng turned her gaze to Zhang Meng. Then, she looked at Zhang Xiaoming. Who is this young master? Why don't you introduce him to Mother?" When Zhang Xiaoming heard this, he hurriedly stood up and said, "His name is Zhang Meng. He's a good brother that Fan Gongzi and I met when we went out this time." Today, I specially brought him over to meet Mother. Zhang Ming also hurriedly stood up and cupped his fists. This one is Zhang Ming. Greetings to old madam. Lady Zhang hurriedly waved her hand. Quickly sit down and talk. You and Amin are good friends, so there's no need to be polite here. When she said this, Lady Zhang turned to look at Xiao Yu and asked with a smile, just now, I heard you guys arguing outside. What was it about? When Xiao Yu heard this, she hurriedly walked to Lady Zhang's side. She clenched her small fists and gently massaged Lady Zhang's back. Mother, I heard that Big Brother fan has something good. I don't know if it's true or not, so I asked him. When Lady Zhang heard this, she turned to look at Fan Shouwu and said with a smile, Fan Gongzi, is that true? Fan Shouwu hurriedly replied, Yes, it is true. Lady Zhang said, What good thing is it? Let me hear it. Chapter 104. After Fan Shouwu heard Lady Zhang's words, he hurriedly said, It's nothing. I just got some feathers from the nightmare eagle. It's really nothing good. Lady Zhang's eyes lit up when she heard this. The feathers of a nightmare eagle? Fan Shouwu nodded. Lady Zhang asked, The feathers used to make the black feather cloak? Fan Shouwu smiled bitterly and nodded again. Lady Zhang turned to look at Xiao Yu and said with a smile, I was wondering why our obedient Xiao Yu would covet other people's things. It turns out that Fan Gongzi has such good things. It's no wonder that girl Xiao Yu is so jealous. Xiao Yu heard this and hurriedly nodded. That's right, Mother. After saying this, Xiao Yu leaned towards Lady Zhang and looked at Fan Shouwu. She smiled and said, Mother, I heard that Big Brother Fan has 2 black feather cloaks. After Lady Zhang heard Xiao Yu's words, her eyes lit up again. Oh, is that so, Fan Gongzi? Do you really have 2 black feather cloaks? When Fan Shouwu heard this, he turned to look at Zhang Qiuming and nodded. He gritted his teeth and said, In the beginning, there were 2 black feather cloaks. However, Prince Zhang and I each had 1. Lady Zhang heard this and was overjoyed. She turned to look at Zhang Qiuming and was about to ask when Xiao Yu, who was standing at the side, quickly ran to Zhang Qiuming's side. She pulled on his arm and asked sweetly, Brother, is it true? Do you also have a black feather cloak? When Zhang Qiuming heard this, he nodded helplessly. Fan Gongzi and I do each have a black feather cloak. When Xiao Yu heard Zhang Qiuming's words, she was immediately overjoyed. She shook her brother's arm and said coquettishly, Brother, can you give your black feather cloak to your cutest sister? Zhang Qiuming ignored Xiao Yu's coquettishness. He waved his hand vigorously and broke free from Xiao Yu's pull. Then he took 2 steps back and put some distance between the two. Xiao Yu, stop fooling around. Brother still has a use for that black feather cloak. When Xiao Yu heard this and saw that Zhang Qiuming wasn't willing to give her the black feather cloak, she pouted. Brother, you're too biased. I've always been so nice to you. Now that I have something good, you're thinking about someone else. When she said this, Xiao Yu's eyes suddenly turned. She grabbed Zhang Qiuming's arm again and begged. Brother, just give it to me. I'm begging you, brother. When Zhang Qiuming saw that Xiao Yu was begging him again, he hurriedly dodged. However, Xiao Yu didn't give up. When the two of them were in a mess, Lady Zhang suddenly coughed. Cough. The two of you are too much. You're making a ruckus in front of Fan Gongzi. What kind of scandal is this? I mean, as her brother, you don't even know how to give in to your sister. This is outrageous. When she said this, Lady Zhang looked at Xiao Yu. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and come over. When Xiao Yu heard Lady Zhang's call, she didn't dare to disobey. She could only let go of Zhang Qiuming and walked back unhappily. Brother is so stingy. He doesn't care about his sister at all. When Xiao Yu walked back to her side, Lady Zhang smiled at Zhang Qiuming and said, By the way, Amin, when Mother went to the capital, she saw someone wearing the black feather cloak. After so many years, I've long forgotten what it looks like. Can you show it to Mother? Since Lady Zhang had spoken, Zhang Qiuming naturally didn't dare to disobey. He could only lower his head and say, Mother, I haven't found someone to sew the feathers of the eagle of nightmares yet. When it's done, I'll show it to Mother. When Lady Zhang heard this, she nodded in satisfaction. Then, She turned to look at Xiaoyu beside her and winked slightly. Xiaoyu, who originally had a face full of disappointment, immediately understood when she saw Madame Zhang's expression. The disappointment in her heart immediately vanished into thin air. "Umph. Even if you don't give me the black feather cloak, I'll ask Mother to give it to me." While they were talking, Zhang Meng didn't stay idle. Zhang Xiaoming's purpose of bringing him here was to let him see the secret room designed by the Tianji sect. After greeting Lady Zhang, Zhang Meng began to observe the situation in the room. However, after looking for a long time, he still didn't find any clues. Needless to say, there was an entrance to the secret room. If Zhang Xiaoming hadn't said that there was a secret room in this room, Zhang Meng probably wouldn't have known that there was a secret room in this room. Zhang Meng observed very carefully. The calligraphy on the wall, the furniture in the room, and the decorations on the furniture were all carefully examined by Zhang Meng. However, he still didn't find the secret room. Logically speaking, no matter how tightly the entrance to the secret room was built, there should be something different about it. However, there wasn't anything different at all. Seeing all this, Zhang Meng really admired the Tianji sect. The person who built this secret room was Yi Xian, the grand disciple of the Tianji sect leader, Fang Tianji. Although Yi Xian was Fang Tianji's grand disciple, Zhang Meng was sure that it was impossible for him to be personally taught by Fang Tianji. It was probably not easy to be personally taught by his master, Sun Xinjing. Yet, such a grand disciple of the Tianji sect was able to build a secret room that even Zhang Meng couldn't find any clues about. This also showed how powerful the Tianji sect was. After looking for a while, Zhang Meng still didn't find any secret passageways. Helpless, he could only secretly press his hand on the wall behind him, preparing to observe the situation in the room. After Zhang Meng came to this world, although he obtained unparalleled strength, he didn't obtain any skills that could see through everything. Although Zhang Meng's strength was unparalleled, he had many weaknesses. He couldn't fly, he didn't have any skills that could see through everything, he didn't have the ability to heal, and so on. Although he didn't have any extra skills, after experimenting, Zhang Meng realized that as long as the distance wasn't too far, as long as he placed his hand on an object or a person's body, he could see through everything, including walls. Zhang Meng placed his hand on the wall behind him, squinted his eyes, and transferred the energy in his body slightly to the wall. Then, the scene in front of him changed immediately. Originally, Zhang Meng could only see the surface. But now, under the support of Zhang Meng's energy, he could see everywhere in the room. Under this power, Zhang Meng could turn any object into nothingness. Or, he could even practice with it. After a while, Zhang Meng saw the entrance to the secret room. The entrance to the secret room was behind a cabinet in the corner of the room. The secret room didn't have a door. The cabinet in front of it was the door to the secret room. The cabinet was very cleverly made. A small partition on the cabinet could be used to open the door to the secret room. This partition was used to open the door to the secret room. On top of it, there was a vase with a bouquet of fresh flowers. The vase could be moved at will without affecting the secret room. Chapter 105. The switch design of this secret passage was extremely ingenious. In order to open the door of the secret room, the vase had to be removed, and then the partition would be flipped over. Only then would the door of the secret room open. The partition that opened the door of the secret room could not be flipped over by removing the vase. Instead, it needed to be moved horizontally before it could be flipped over. In this secret room, the outermost cabinet was the door. About half a meter inside, there was an iron door. This iron door, under Zhang Meng's observation, felt that this iron door was at least 10 centimeters thick. As for the way to open this big iron door, Zhang Meng also carefully examined it, but found that this big iron door did not have any mechanism to command it, only a keyhole. Zhang Meng sucked in a breath of cold air when he saw this. The entrance to this secret chamber was designed like an iron bastion. The outermost cabinet's design was ingenious. When it was closed, it was fastened to the wall tightly, and almost no trace of it could be seen. Moreover, even if you found a way to open this cabinet, you would still be helpless when you reached the iron door inside. A 10-centimeter thick, big iron door, no matter how great your ability was without a key, it was impossible to open it. Zhang Meng's line of sight passed through the big iron door and explored inside. Behind the big iron door, there was a staircase leading down. Zhang Meng's line of sight followed the staircase down. At the end of the staircase, there was a secret room. This secret room was also separated from the outside by a big iron door. This big iron door, the way to open was not with a key, but with a mechanism. In the middle of the big iron door, the head of a fierce tiger was cast. The fierce tiger was in a roaring posture, its mouth wide open, and its eyes wide open. It looked extremely terrifying. The way to open the big iron door was actually very simple. It was the fierce tiger's eyes. This was, however, the way to open it was a little different. Ordinary secret passages with hidden mechanisms. Ordinary mechanisms had to be pressed in, and then the mechanism could be activated. But this secret room was the opposite. You needed to pull out the fierce tiger's 2 eyes to open the secret passage. The tiger's eyes were wide open. If he didn't know how to open it, he wouldn't know that the eyes were the mechanism to open the door. Another important point was that when they wanted to activate the mechanism, they couldn't just pull on one of the tiger's eyes. Otherwise, they would be in big trouble. If he only pulled one of the tiger's eyes, then there would be a change in front of the door of the secret room. A large guillotine would immediately fall from the top of the secret room to teach the intruder a lesson. After passing through this large iron door, there was a very large secret room. On one side of the secret room, there were dozens of big boxes. On the other side of the wall, there were a few swords and sabers. On the wall opposite the door, there were some murals. Seeing this, Zhang Meng didn't want to continue reading. After all, this was the Zhang family secret. It wasn't good for him to read it too clearly. Zhang Meng had just finished looking at the situation of the secret room when he felt someone pat his shoulder. He quickly turned his head and saw Zhang Qiuming smiling at him. Zhang Meng said, "Prince Zhang, what's the matter? Is something the matter?" Zhang Qiuming heard this and was stunned at first. Then, he asked curiously, "Didn't you hear what we were talking about just now?" Zhang Meng shook his head. "I was thinking too hard just now. I didn't hear what you were talking about." Zhang Qiuming heard this and understood in his heart. Zhang Meng must have been looking for the secret passage and was so engrossed that he didn't hear what they were talking about. Zhang Qiuming saw that Zhang Meng didn't hear what they were talking about just now, so he explained with a smile, "My mother wants to ask you where you got the Eagle of Nightmare's feathers." Zhang Meng was stunned when he heard this and then replied, "Don't you and Fan Gongzi know about that place? Isn't it the Red Mountain Peak?" This time, before Zhang Qiuming could ask again, Lady Zhang asked first, "Prince Zhang, it's said that the Eagle of Nightmares is not only powerful, but also has the ability to breathe fire. How did you get the feathers of such a powerful monster?" It turned out that when Zhang Meng was looking at the secret room, Lady Zhang asked about the feathers of the Eagle of Nightmares. Fan Shouwu simply confessed and told her about how he got the feathers of the Eagle of Nightmares from Zhang Meng. When Madame Zhang heard this, she was also extremely shocked. Lady Zhang naturally heard of the reputation of the Eagle of Nightmares. She originally thought that the feathers of the Eagle of Nightmares were bought by Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming when they went to the Magic Empire. After all, although the Eagle of Nightmares was powerful, the Magic Empire was also full of talents and masters. It was not impossible to hunt down the Eagle of Nightmares. It was not surprising that Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming could buy the feathers of the Eagle of Nightmares in the Magic Empire. However, Lady Zhang would never have thought that the feathers of the Eagle of Nightmares that Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming obtained were actually from Zhang Meng. This was simply too unbelievable. Thinking of this, Lady Zhang asked. After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Lady Zhang turned to look at Zhang Qiuming and saw that Zhang Qiuming nodded slightly. Lady Zhang was a little confused. The young man in front of her was really young. His face was childish and was not yet at the age to lie. His clothes were coarse and did not look like high-end goods. His words and actions did not have the domineering aura of a rich family's child. He was just an ordinary child, dressed differently and looked ordinary. However, when Lady Zhang looked carefully, she was shocked to find that he was just an ordinary child. He did not have the demeanor of a master at all. What was going on? How did such an ordinary person obtain the feathers of the Eagle of Nightmares? Thinking of this, Lady Zhang smiled and asked, "Prince Zhang, where did you learn from?" Zhang Ming heard this and hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "I'm from Twin Bull Mountain. I don't have a master. My martial arts were taught by my father." Lady Zhang was first stunned when she heard this. Then she turned to look at Zhang Qiuming. Which sect is Twin Bull Mountain? Why haven't I heard of it before?" Zhang Ming and Zhang Qiuming went to the Red Mountain Peak together. On the way, Zhang Qiuming also asked Zhang Ming about his background. Zhang Ming naturally had nothing to hide and explained his background clearly. At this moment, hearing Lady Zhang's question, Zhang Qiuming hurriedly replied, "Mother, Twin Bull Mountain is a mountain stronghold 70 miles away from Qingmu City." Mountain stronghold? Lady Zhang was even more confused when she heard this. She suddenly turned to look at Fan Shouwu. Is the Eagle of Nightmares really that powerful? Fan Shouwu nodded. When we met the Eagle of Nightmares, Lord Mu and the other 4 people from the prefectural governor's mansion were also there. When Lady Zhang heard Fan Shouwu say this, she could not help but ask, "Fan Gongzi, is the Lord Mu you're talking about the prefectural governor's mansion's chief bodyguard, Mu Hongyi?" Fan Shouwu nodded. "Yes, it's Lord Mu Hongyi," Lady Zhang asked. "Are the other people also the prefectural governor's mansion's bodyguards?" Fan Shouwu heard Lady Zhang's words and nodded again. "Yes." Chapter 106. After Lady Zhang heard Fan Shouwu's words, she was slightly relieved. With Lord Mu present, there shouldn't be any major problems. With his martial arts, he should be able to deal with a nightmare eagle. Fan Shouwu smiled bitterly and shook his head. That's not the case. When the nightmare eagle was flying in the sky, it didn't attack us. Instead, it started to breathe fire around us, setting the surrounding trees ablaze. In the end, the fire grew bigger and bigger. The fire had already sealed off all of our escape routes. Even if we wanted to escape, we couldn't. Zhang Qiuming continued, "That's right. At that time, the fire was too big. If we wanted to rush out of the fire, there was no chance at all." Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming had returned yesterday. They hadn't told their family about what happened when they went out. Originally, Zhang Qiuming had already met Lady Zhang this morning. However, because there was a guest visiting today, he only briefly informed his mother before leaving in a hurry. The guest that Zhang Qiuming and Fan Shouwu had to receive today was Li Wenshan. After Li Wenshan knew that Fan Shouwu had come to Qingyang City, he had wanted to ask Zhang Qiuming to introduce him to Fan Shouwu. As Fan Shouwu had just arrived at Qingmu City, he had left with Zhang Qiuming and only returned yesterday evening. In order to meet Fan Shouwu, Li Wenshan had already sent servants to stand guard in front of the Zhang residence. He ordered them to immediately report to him the moment Zhang Qiuming and Fan Shouwu returned. Therefore, Li Wenshan was able to know that Zhang Qiuming had returned in the shortest amount of time. In order to be able to meet Fan Shouwu earlier, Li Wenshan had immediately rushed to the Zhang residence after preparing the gifts. As Li Wenshan wanted to discuss with Fan Shouwu, he couldn't discuss it in front of too many people. Therefore, Li Wenshan wanted to chase Zhang Ming away and meet Zhang Qiuming alone. Unfortunately, he had bitten his own tongue and had to go home to treat it. After Lady Zhang heard Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming's story, she was shocked and hurriedly asked, what should we do? The fire was so big. How did you escape? Come here and let Mother see if you're burned." When Zhang Qiuming heard this, he quickly walked to the side of the locals and said with a smile, "Mother, you don't have to worry. I'm fine." After Lady Zhang heard Zhang Qiuming's words, she carefully sized him up and finally relaxed. "Quickly tell me, how did you escape? Could it be that Lord Mu saved you?" Zhang Qiuming smiled and shook his head. "Mother, you don't know how big the fire was at that time. It was at least 40 to 50 meters wide. It's impossible for a person to rush through the middle. When Lady Zhang heard this, she asked curiously, "Then how did you escape? Did you fly out?" Zhang Qiuming smiled and nodded. "Mother, you guessed right. We flew out." When Lady Zhang heard this, she was stunned at first. Then, she pretended to be angry and said, "You child, after going out for a while, you've learned how to lie. Quickly tell us, how did you escape?" Xiaoyu was also anxious when she heard this. She urged, "Brother, hurry up and tell us. Don't keep us in suspense and make us anxious." Zhang Qiuming smiled. "I didn't lie to you. We really flew out. If you don't believe me, you can ask Fan Gongzi." After Xiaoyu heard Zhang Qiuming's words, she immediately turned to Fan Shouwu. "Big brother Fan, is what my brother said true? Did you really fly out of the fire?" Fan Shouwu smiled and nodded. "Your brother is right. We did fly out of the fire. Although we didn't fly out on our own, it's close." After Xiaoyu heard Fan Shouwu's words, she was even more confused. She quickly turned to look at Zhang Qiuming and said angrily, "Brother, hurry up and tell us before we get anxious." When Zhang Qiuming heard this and saw Xiaoyu's anxious look, he suddenly smiled and said, "I'm not telling you." After Xiaoyu heard Zhang Qiuming's words, she was so angry that she pointed at him and was almost speechless. "You." Suddenly, Xiaoyu turned around and looked at Lady Zhang with grievance. She said coquettishly, "Mom, why don't you control brother? Look at how infuriating he is. He only knows how to make me angry all day long." Lady Zhang smiled and patted Xiaoyu. Then, she turned to look at Zhang Qiuming. "I mean, don't keep us in suspense. Hurry up and tell us. How did you get out of the fire?" He could ignore Xiaoyu's words, but Zhang Qiuming still had to listen to Lady Zhang's words. "Mom, I'll tell you. We were thrown out of the fire." "What? Thrown out?" After Lady Zhang heard Zhang Qiuming's words, she was suddenly stunned. However, Xiaoyu didn't believe him. She pointed at Zhang Qiuming and said, "Mom, brother is too bad. Now he's even lying to you. Hurry up and control him." After Lady Zhang recovered from her shock, she looked at Zhang Qiuming. She naturally knew that her son could lie to Xiaoyu, but he would never lie to her. "But how is that possible?" Lady Zhang asked doubtfully. "I mean, are you saying that you were thrown out of the fire?" Zhang Qiuming nodded. "That's right. We were thrown out of the fire. That's how we escaped." Lady Zhang knew martial arts. Although it wasn't very high, Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming combined were definitely no match for her. Just now, Zhang Qiuming had said that the fire was about 50 to 60 meters wide. In addition, the edge of the fire was extremely hot, so they had to retreat a little further. Based on this calculation, if they wanted to get to a safe place outside the fire, they would need to travel at least 100 meters. How far was a distance of 100 meters? If they ran, it wouldn't take long. However, if they were thrown out, it would be a bit exaggerated. Lady Zhang was puzzled, but looking at her son's expression, it didn't seem like he was lying. Could it be true? Could someone really throw them out 100 meters? Could it be... Thinking of this, Lady Zhang asked tentatively, "Could it be that Lord Mu threw you out?" Zhang Qiuming shook his head. At that time, Lord Mu was also trapped in the fire. We also asked him. In that situation, Lord Mu couldn't do anything. Lady Zhang asked, "Could it be that an outsider saved you?" Zhang Qiuming shook his head. Then he smiled and said, "Mom, don't make wild guesses. The person who threw us out is right in front of us." After Lady Zhang heard Zhang Qiuming's words, she immediately looked at Zhang Ming. There were only a few people in the room. Xiaoyu couldn't have done it, and neither could Zhang Qiuming. Although Fan Shouwu's martial arts were better than Zhang Qiuming's, there was a limit to how much stronger he was. Thus, there was only one person left in the room, Zhang Ming. Looking at the young man in front of her, Lady Zhang was even more puzzled. To be able to throw someone out 100 meters, how much strength did that require? At least, Lady Zhang had never heard of such a thing. Chapter 107. As the city lord's wife, Lady Zhang was naturally knowledgeable. In her impression, she had never seen anyone who could do such a thing. Of course, it wasn't that no one could do such a thing, but it was impossible for those powerful people to appear here. Could this young man in front of her be one of those powerful people? Or could it be that he only looked young, but was actually over 100 years old? Just as Lady Zhang was puzzled, Xiaoyu said unhappily, "Mother, brother is too bad. He even dares to lie to you now. Hurry up and control him." Lady Zhang ignored Xiaoyu's words and only looked at Zhongming. After a while, she slowly asked, "Prince Zhang, is what Amin said true? Did you really throw them out of the fire?" After saying this, Lady Zhang's gaze was fixed on Zhongming. Hearing this, Zhongming nodded slightly, but didn't say anything. This time, without waiting for Lady Zhang to speak, Xiaoyu had already walked quickly to Zhongming. After looking at him carefully, she shook her head and said, "I don't believe you. You must be lying." Lady Zhang heard this and quickly scolded loudly. "Xiaoyu, don't be rude. How can you speak to Prince Zhang like that? Hurry up and apologize to Prince Zhang." Hearing this, Xiaoyu glanced at Zhongming again. Then, she shook her head and said sadly, "Mother, but he doesn't look like it." After saying this, Xiaoyu turned to look at Zhongming and asked tentatively, "Did you really throw my brother and the others out of the fire?" At this point, Xiaoyu paused for a moment before adding in a low voice, "Don't lie to me." Zhongming nodded with a smile. "Your brother didn't lie to you. I really threw them out of the fire." After listening to Zhongming's answer, Little Red looked at Zhongming carefully and asked doubtfully, "Do you really have that much strength?" This time, before Zhongming could answer, Zhang Qiuming spoke first. "Xiaoyu, let me tell you, even the earthen bear is not as strong as the fierce brothers." Xiaoyu's almond-shaped eyes widened. "Really? You're stronger than the bear of the earth?" At this moment, Lady Zhang, who was sitting at the head of the table, was feeling a little uneasy. It could throw people 100 meters away, and it was stronger than the earth bear. Just how much power was this? To be able to throw someone 100 meters away, there might be some kind of coincidence involved. This was something that could not be said for sure. However, Lady Zhang knew the strength of the earthen bear of the earth. Although she had never seen the bear of the earth with her own eyes, the bear of the earth was very famous in the Fenglin mountain range. The bear of the earth did not know any magic skills. It only relied on its brute force to make a name for itself. If one wanted to be stronger than the bear of the earth, only those peerless experts and experts who had reached the post-liminary realm would be able to do so. Could it be that the young man in front of her had already reached the post-liminary realm? Impossible. Lady Zhang had seen those experts who had reached the post-liminary realm. These people were almost all experts from the various large sections. Even if there were some young people who had reached this level, it was because the sects had spent a lot of effort to nurture them. Some large sects, in order to nurture the younger generation, would let these young people consume all kinds of spiritual herbs to increase their strength. It could be said that in this world, if one wanted to advance by leaps and bounds in martial arts, this was the only way. Of course, spiritual herbs were not cabbages. They were relatively rare. Even large sects would treat them as treasures. And the young people that the sects were willing to spend a lot of effort to nurture were all talented and intelligent people. Among those of the same generation, all of them were outstanding. Only these talented people would be nurtured by the sects with a lot of effort. Could it be that the person in front of her was one of those talented young people? Was he one of those talented young people that the large sects were willing to spend a lot of effort to nurture? Or could it be that the Twin Bull Mountain was a large sect to begin with? Only a large sect had the conditions to nurture such an expert. However, the Twin Bull Mountain was not far from Azurewood City. If there really was such a large sect with such a peerless expert, there was no reason that Lady Zhang, who was in Azurewood City, had never heard of it. No one noticed Lady Zhang's thoughts. Zhang Qiuming saw that Xiaoyu was still doubtful and could not help but laugh. "Xiaoyu, don't doubt the strength of the fierce brothers. Everyone can prove this point." At this point, Zhang Qiuming turned his gaze back to Lady Zhang before continuing. "Mother, when we went there, we encountered the Earth Black Bear. At that time, if it wasn't for the fierce brothers' help, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to escape. Lady Zhang heard this and calmed herself down before asking, "How did Prince Zhang chase the Earth Black Bear away?" Zhang Xiaoming smiled as he replied, "Nothing much. At that time, when we thought it was over, we saw Zhang Meng hugging a big tree and directly sent the Earth Black Bear flying. After the Earth Black Bear was sent flying, it took a long time to get up. After it got up, it immediately ran away." "Ran away?" Lady Zhang muttered to herself. She looked at Zhang Meng again. She never would have thought that this would happen. Zhang Xiaoming continued, "Mother, is there something more interesting?" Lady Zhang heard this and turned her head to look at Zhang Xiaoming. "What is it?" Zhang Xiaoming said, "When we came back, we met the Earth Black Bear again by the river. At that time, we were almost dying of thirst. After seeing the Earth Black Bear, we were all scared out of our wits. Even though we were so thirsty, no one went to the river to drink water, because that Earth Black Bear was lying by the river, sleeping. Originally, we planned to go around the lower reaches of the river to drink water. However, the fierce brothers weren't afraid at all and directly brought us to the river to drink water. We drank water by the side of the Earth Black Bear. The funniest thing was that the Earth Black Bear clearly saw us but still pretended to be asleep, allowing us to drink water by its side. Mother, don't you think this Earth Black Bear is funny?" After Lady Zhang heard Zhang Xiaoming's words, she nodded. Although she looked calm on the surface, her mind was already in turmoil. This young man, just who is he? The Earth Black Bear has a bad temper, and almost no one dares to provoke it. Because if you provoke it, the Earth Black Bear will definitely fight you to the death. But why? Lady Zhang thought for a while before asking, "Amin, when you were drinking water, did the Earth Black Bear really see you?" After Zhang Xiaoming heard Lady Zhang's words, he nodded vigorously. "Mother, I saw it. When we went to drink water, the Earth Black Bear opened its eyes and looked at us, then closed them again." Lady Zhang looked at Zhang Xiaoming doubtfully. "Really? You really saw it?" Zhang Xiaoming nodded. "Really, Mother, I'm not lying to you." At that time, Fan Gongzi was also there. If you don't believe me, you can ask Fan Gongzi. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.